across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's always fabulous to have your company. Very much appreciate you taking the time. If you've missed any of the show at all coming up or yesterday's show and you want to catch up, you can always go to my YouTube page. You've got a very, very easy way of finding it. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. If you hit subscribe, and then you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Labour having admitted that no Channel migrants have been returned to France yet under its one-in, one-out deal. Originally announced, remember, in mid-July. It's now September, folks. We're now in phase 2, by the way, according to the Prime Minister. It emerged yesterday that 3,567 illegal migrants have arrived in dinghies. By the way, those are the ones we know about since the deal was struck with France, but not a single one has been returned. The Home Secretary, Vaping, has been out and about today in front of all her flags, and she says she expects the deportations to begin later this month. I think when they said that it would all happen within weeks, they didn't specify that it would be within, like, you know, under 10 weeks or indeed under 200 weeks. So who knows, it may not happen at all. But anyway, she also, the Home Secretary, has announced a temporary suspension of the Refugee Family Reunion Scheme, which means that migrants granted asylum will be temporarily being the key word there, barred from bringing family members to the UK. We have seen some cases of people, we're not talking about someone being able to bring in their husband or wife and their 3 kids. We are talking about people bringing in their entire extended family, 20 plus in some cases. Also, as I say, the Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has, he thinks, bless him, reset his government in a move which many are seeing as an undermining of Rachel Reeves' authority at the Treasury. As we were discussing yesterday, this little mini reshuffle of people no one has ever heard of. But the PM basically has moved a senior figure from the Treasury into number 10. Looks like he's going to try and take a bit of control of the budget. Might be a good idea, actually, to have no fingers anywhere near the budget, Prime Minister, given what an absolute disaster it is very likely to be. Plus, a fast-track UK visa scheme is being put in place for students coming to Britain from Gaza. Oh, good. I know, I can hear you shout it. Vet Cooper said the Home Office is in the process of putting in place systems to issue expedited visas with biometric checks. Oh, we're going to find out who these people actually are we? For people living in besieged Palestinian territory who have won a scholarship to British universities. Turns out virtually everybody in Gaza is studying for a master's, as we've discovered in media recently. I'm really not sure why these people would be a priority for getting out of Gaza. And I'm really not sure whether or not they will ever be returned. But I think the most exciting news today is, no, not the Prime Minister's birthday, but the fact the Green Party is going to announce its new leadership in about an hour's time. Yes, I know. These are all household names, and we're going to be talking about them. But they could become household names if they end up doing a deal with Jeremy Corbyn's new party, whatever it's called this week, and they end up scuppering Keir Starmer at the next election. So all of that coming up. I do want to hear from you on any of the topics we're talking about, as always, but in particular, that one-in, one-out deal we heard so much about. We're now told within weeks it will actually start. People have been detained, but 3,567 Channel migrants have arrived since the government announced that returns deal to France, but 0 have been deported. Your reaction, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Do try to keep it clean, otherwise I can't put you on air or read it out online. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Delighted to say joining me for the show, as always on a Tuesday, is Tom Slater, the editor of Spiked Online. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Are you as excited as I am about the Prime Minister's birthday?
Absolutely. How can you not be? Many happy returns. Keir Starmer, hope you have a good day, unlike the year that you've inflicted on the rest of us.
I hope you have a good day, unlike most people in Britain living under your premiership.
Quite.
I want to talk about this one-in, one-out migrant deal. Shall we, though, quickly just play a clip of a video that the Prime Minister put out on social media yesterday? I mean, strong David Brent echoes, it's got to be said. But this was a video that the Prime Minister put out, telling us all about how, I don't know, I don't remember ever getting this memo. We are no longer in phase 1 of his government, we're now in phase 2. Have a watch and a listen.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the Number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction about what we're doing. It needs a more powerful Number 10, so we've added to the team with some really important new members. I made a number of other changes, but this is about focus on delivery, now marching forward to the next phase.
I mean, I don't know about you. I feel buoyed up, and certainly I'm marching into phase 2 with the good spirits, confidence, and conviction about what we're doing that the Prime Minister feels. Do you share all those feelings, Tom?
Well, I just think phase 1 was such a roaring success. I can't wait to find out what phase 2 has in store for us.
So many successes, we can't list them.
No, exactly. I mean, there are too many to name, and also I think because of how bad.
I can't even keep a straight face.
Well, whose idea was that? Like, who is that for? That looks. It's not
It's
even
the
good
fact
enough
that
to
he
become
said.
internal.
So we go to phase 2, 1st of September. I mean, he actually says the date. Like, do they not even know the date in that room?
Apparently, they need to be told it. There's also there's something kind of vaguely sinister about it as well. It's like phase 1 is complete. The immiseration continues into phase 2.
Well, it's a bit year zero Mao, isn't it?
Exactly. Like he's got his kind of, it's like a 5-year plan.
Yeah,
almost.
we're all
It's
going to
a
be sent back to the
5-phase
fields
plan.
to put up solar panels.
Yeah.
And then the executions begin. And anyone with well,
Well, at least that would liven things up. I mean, the thing about that video and this week and this reshuffle that wasn't, it was just about kind of shuffling the mandarins around. You think, what? Like, I've never seen a government that's both so disastrous and boring at the same time.
That is a
toxic
very,
combination.
very interesting point, because Boris's government was disastrous in lots of ways, so mostly towards the end. And lots of stuff we found out afterwards, like the Boris wave of migrants, but it was never boring.
Yeah.
And then you get this sort of, you think John Major, it's very, very, very dull and boring. But I mean, what we would do for a little bit of, I mean, I've always said, people say, oh, I don't like people who are ideological. I'd love someone who has a proper ideology and a philosophy and a vision. I'd love that. But I will also accept someone who's just quite dull, but is a good manager. As I've said, put the guy who manages to get things on the shelves in Tesco for the right weather when it's a barbecue and things like that. Get that man or woman in charge of the country. Someone who can just quietly get stuff done. That would do. I'll take that as a second option. But someone who's utterly incompetent, with no vision, no anything, anything discernible. I'm always fascinated. I do have a bunch of lefties in my family, and I remember some of them saying to me when Keir Starmer became elected in 2020, and then some of them knew him in the North London. That is my world, which is why I know it so well. Okay, and they really think this guy was the great White Hope. This guy he's a visionary. He's a leader. It's like, what are you seeing and hearing that I'm not? I mean, it's his birthday today. I mean, you just see the social media is just a goss. Every single message this man puts out on social media is met with utter contempt and derision every single time. In particular, the reshuffle, as you say, the reshuffle. We barely even mentioned it on the show yesterday because it was so blur. And I mean, even though some of the people he's bringing in communications, like Tim Allen, used to work for Tony Blair, I mean, the man knows his stuff. Okay, he's absolutely hotshot.
David Dinsmore, formerly of this building,
of this parish, exactly.
Impressive person.
But again, an awful lot of people who do understand things like that, the PR. However, they're also all people who are totally and utterly part of that whole Blairite, Starmerite, lefty HR lawyer, HR human rights lawyer sort of zeitgeist. They genuinely do not get. And I was that awful phrase, ordinary people. No, they don't get most people in this country. They genuinely recoil from people talking about British culture, and they see the British flag and the English flag even more and go, it's sort of like kryptonite to them. I mean, they don't. None of these people get it. I have no hope that Darren Jones moving from the Treasury to number 10 is going to make a blind bit of difference to the ability of this government to put out an economic policy or any other policy that might work.
And it's one of those things where I'm sure that many of these individuals are perfectly impressive on their own terms. It's just the fact that, especially when it comes to the communication side, they're being brought in to sell a vision that does not exist. Yeah. It's like, how can you sell a product that you can't hold in your hands? I mean, it's this whole vacuum is at the centre of government because it is Keir Starmer. The fact that you've got Darren Jones being moved over from essentially being
number 2 to Rachel Reeves,
exactly, to now being in number 10, I think also indicates that there's just a lack of talent at the top in terms of people actually in kind of more ministerial level posts.
I mean, the only one anyone's heard of,
you've got him around,
Angela Rayner,
indication, isn't it?
You've got Yvette Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear the tumbleweed? I mean, who else is there in government you could even recognise?
No, exactly. I mean, there's this week I was reminded that Nick Thomas-Symonds existed because he was out, giving some speeches about Brexit, but they have not cut through at all. And that's not just a media thing. It's because the fact that and nor is this exclusively a problem on the Labour benches, by the way, but just having politicians of stature is something which this generation really, really struggle with, and so therefore it's almost immaterial.
And just sort of intellectual ballast behind them. Yeah, exactly. And you think of, I think back in the 1970s and 1980s, and you think about, some of the big beasts on the left and the right. I mean, serious players. You had to listen when they said something. You had to listen. Everyone knew who they were.
Absolutely.
And well, I mean, Yvette Cooper's constantly on the telly. I mean, virtually all the items we're talking about in the next hour, you think, they're all under Yvette Cooper's remit. And let's face it, I think the woman works hard. I think she's a bright woman. She's been around for years. She was in the Blair government, the Brown government. I mean, she knows what she's talking about. But again, completely on the wrong side of history, and you know what she's trying to do when it comes to things like illegal migration. She doesn't really believe in any of it because she is a no borders lefty in her heart of hearts. But 10th of July, it was announced when Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron had that big summit here in the UK. It was announced that there was this one in, one out migrant deal. I mean, we all just laughed at the time, didn't we? It's like, that wasn't what we were looking for. It was ratified. Well, it was confirmed a few days later in the Commons. Almost a month later, on the 4th of August, it was ratified, so this is definitely going to happen. We know that within a couple of days, people were detained. I mean, here's a mind-blowing idea. Let's detain people who enter the country illegally. It has now been admitted by the Home Office that no Channel migrants have been returned to France yet under the one in, one out deal, despite 3,567 people arriving since the deal was struck. I mean, this is laughable.
No, and even on its own terms, it was always laughable because how small it was going to be. About like 50 people a week. It averaged out to like 17 in, maybe one out. And then you look at some of the small print. I think as soon as we, detain someone and earmark them for deportation, we have to do that within 14 days. Then the French get 28 days to respond to it. If they don't respond to it, it just sort of disappears or whatever. Also, the French government could collapse any moment now. There's a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister next week, I think. So they haven't even passed some of the legislation to put this deal into place.
And for instance, things like being able to go into the water.
No, exactly. It was essentially never going to touch the sides, even if it went off perfectly. And there's a good chance it could completely unravel any day now.
I know, Yvette Cooper this morning kept saying, again and again, listen to lots of interviews she did, I mean, she kept saying, the last government lost complete, control of this issue. True. She said, the Rwanda deal was up and running for 2 years, and the only people who were sent back were 4 people who did it voluntarily and were paid to go there. But it wasn't up and running. So that's, again, she's selling shit. And what annoys me is the people interviewing her don't challenge her on this and say, no, that's not true, it wasn't up and running. One of the reasons why it wasn't up and running was because you and your mates made all the challenges and tried to stop it. That said, Tories utterly incompetent on this issue as well. But we did have a few more announcements yesterday in that big statement that we expected, and we talked about it on the show in advance, but that migrants who've been granted asylum, and again, a lot of these people haven't been granted asylum in other countries in Europe. We have a much higher rate, and often they're granted asylum on appeal, will be temporarily blocked from bringing family to the UK. Again, temporarily, that doesn't quite hack it. But the key thing is, when we're talking about these sort of family reunion schemes, they don't seem to be just for, mum, dad and 3 siblings, 3 kids. We're talking about, grandparents, in-laws, your brother-in-law, your cousins. I mean, and there was one case that was reported. Over 20 members of a family were invited in. Mum's been busy. Have you thought of contraception? I'm thinking at this point. No, but I mean, but it's just. Yeah. But we're not talking about parents and children being reunited.
And I think it's a good example, actually, of when you lose control of your asylum system, you end up having to do quite blunt things. So clearly, if it becomes a route for essentially chain migration, as you describe, and also if you just lose control of the system in general, which is just overwhelmed with people who are basically illegal migrants or who are coming in just unsustainable levels for us to absorb. Because in a kind of managed asylum system from places that the public are generally comfortable with, a manageable level or whatever, I don't think the idea of, you know, bringing over someone's son or husband or whatever would be controversial at all. But the government finds itself having to do these things because it has to demonstrate it's got a grip on them, even though even on its own terms, this is not obviously going to have a huge effect.
And we have seen exposure.
Numbers.
I mean, even when it comes to things like students, foreign students coming over, and Nigeria apparently were the worst of offenders on this issue, where someone's coming over to study in the UK and they're bringing in, 10 family members. Like, OK, you're a mature student, you're married with 2 kids, you're going to bring your other half and your 2 kids. I don't think many people would think that was controversial, assuming you were going to go home or take up a great job and get a work visa here. But, that's not what's happened. It's interesting today, the warning that has gone out to foreign students saying, don't overstay your visa because there might be trouble. You think, did no one think of doing this before? When you fill out a form, if you go to America and you fill out a form, have you, if you lie on this form, if any false information, you will be deported. You will not be able to return. You don't mess about. Well, certainly not under Trump. You don't mess about on things like that. I mean, again, it's the law-abiding people who get caught up in these things. But huge number of the people who we believe are illegal migrants in this country have arrived here perfectly legally. They've just stayed. And you might think, oh, well, at least they're students. They're not illegal migrants. So they're able to get the idea, what, you think these people are properly vetted? Give me a break. They're not. But also, the fact that we have no idea how many are here, how many have left, an awful lot of these people who've come here who then miraculously suddenly discover, oh, it turns out I can't go home because I need to claim asylum. These people are on courses. They're not doing masters in engineering. These are not, they're not all medical students. We're talking about people on English language courses, a lot of them. I mean, people who did that, they're of no economic value to us whatsoever. They shouldn't have been here in the first place.
And it's one of those things where I think in this case it might not even be just that the government or the state has been a soft touch, but that it's just been inept. This is one of the things that Dominic Cummings likes to talk about when he was in Downing Street.
They don't know who's here.
Yeah, and that was one thing he was working on before he gets the heave-ho, was that actually just trying to count in and count out. That's something that you just assume the government
I can understand it when we had to fill out little paper forms. When you go, you go to fairly basket case countries around the world, and as you know, do a lot of travelling, and you have to fill out some little form. You just think, yeah, that is literally going into a pile in a warehouse somewhere. No one's looking at that, but you've got to make sure you've written the right things on it. You get a stamp. I mean, no one even looks at your passport picture. You're just going through the motions.
Absolutely.
And we did that for many years, but then everything's become electronic. And, they're scanning your passport, you're having to go through those gates and things. Surely there is a record of who is here and who is not. How do they not know who is in the country? And the fact I always come back to is when we left the EU, and they wanted to basically make sure that everyone who'd been here and been living here for years as an EU citizen, who'd come here legally, working and living here, often with partners who were British, so they could stay. And basically, you needed to register by a certain date. Say, hello, I've been here for a long time. I'd like to be able to stay. All fine. Had no issue with any of that. But this was not about throwing people out. This was about drawing a line. And they thought there'd be roughly 3 million people. It turns out there were over 5. I think that 5.5 million people registered now. Either some of those people were lying, could be the case. No one keeps a record of when they've come in, or all those people literally in the system. Now, bearing in mind, those people were here legally, able to work legally and pay tax and all of that. But there were 2+ million people in the country we knew nothing about, right? They'd had to scan their passports, the same as you and I do. We knew nothing about them. What are the odds that there are more than that of people who are here completely illegally and had no right to be here? I think it's probably quite high. So when people talk about there may be 1 million illegal migrants in this country, I think people are living in cloud cuckoo land. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't above 3.
And especially because of those numbers in particular about the EU citizens. That's not a rounding error. I mean, that's
not. There are 200,000 more people we hadn't realised.
This is absolutely incredible, but this is the British state, unfortunately. It's it's governed badly and by people with the wrong policies and so on and so forth. But it also just can't do the basics in quite a staggering degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the
and
issue.
that's always my thing about, like, why are you telling me how much sugar there can be in cereal I buy, or where a supermarket can put chocolate on its aisles? You worry about, you do you. Let the supermarkets do them, and I'll do me, and I'll decide what I put in my shopping basket.
It thinks it can completely, change our energy grid. It thinks it can make us go all net zero. It can't even count who's in and who's out of the country.
It can't even do the most. Well, can't even arrest and imprison shoplifters. You can you get the basics right? And then this is like someone who's like, his house is on fire and going, I'm just going to mend this leaky tap. I mean, you're just not dealing with the real issue. Do you think that one of the things we're mostly looking for is an expedited UK visa scheme for students coming to Britain from Gaza, which the Home Secretary also confirmed yesterday? Because when I go to the pub, it's all people are talking about. You know what we need? We need to make sure that some students who want to do masters in in media studies and whatever can get to, and climate change, can get to the UK from their war-torn country to study. I mean, it's what everyone's crying out for, isn't it?
It wouldn't have been the top of my priority list. I'm also very surprised that they came out with this yesterday. This is in the midst of Yvette Cooper trying to answer questions on the question of the border, the question of asylum, in the sense that this has become completely out of control. Why, at this point of all points, they decided to announce this, I think just shows how little grasp they've got of the mood of the country where this issue is concerned.
And again, people are going to be vetted. It's like, yeah, sure they are. I mean, I'm really, really sorry. You're talking about people in a country where the propaganda is off the scale, where people celebrate their children, being blown up as martyrs. I vote no. I vote no, and I include that also with families coming over with children who need to be treated. I'm happy to contribute to them being treated in Qatar or in Saudi or in Egypt or in Jordan, all these countries that claim to be very supportive of the Palestinian people. Yeah, let's help pay for their hospital treatment. Absolutely happy to do that. Israel takes a lot of these people into, pay for their hospital treatment. But yeah, no, thank you. You know for a fact every single one of these families extended families will end up staying here. Yeah,
and you just have to recognise the realities on the ground, because obviously, the primary victims of the Hamas leadership on a day-to-day basis are the Gazans themselves, but at the same time it's a very radicalised population, as you suggest. Hamas were voted into power, it was a long time ago now, but because they haven't had an election since, which tells you everything you need to know about that particular outfit. But there's still a non-negligible portion of the population who have, for understandable reasons, you might say, bought the propaganda, not least because it's enforced at the end of a rifle barrel. So it's one of those things where there's just a refusal to accept the reality of any of these cases. You can, in an ideal world, this might be a lovely idea, but we don't live in an ideal world. That's always the problem that a lot of
but also, again,
politicians
Israel
have.
is fighting an existential war against enemies of Western civilization, not just of the Jewish state, enemies of Western civilization. I'm not entirely sure that when we were at war with Germany that we thought it was a good idea to bring over, people from, I don't know, Bonn, to come over here on scholarships. I'm sorry, I just think this is insane. Tell you what's also insane, just finally, is the number of British people, particularly on the left, pretty much only on the left, who have a really big problem with our flag, as we touched on a bit earlier. But the Labour MP Clive Lewis, bit of a usual suspect.
He can be relied upon to say things like this.
He's claimed that people flying St George's flags outside Migrant Hotel are often extremists who are trying to mark territory. And intimidate. Imagine how intimidating it would be to see Palestinian flags, particularly if you have certain religions. It's an extraordinary thing to say. I mean, again, what do you count as extremist? Saying you don't want loads of illegal migrants in your country. I hate to tell you, Clive, not extremist, really quite a moderate view. The normal view until a few years ago of most politicians. But again, flags are about marking territory, aren't they? But it is. We live in England. The England flag does indeed mark our territory. Not the trans flag, not the pride flag, not the Palestinian flag, but the England flag.
And it seems like a lot of people are trying to judge what these protests mean, what the flag raisers mean, what that's all about from afar. And what's become very clear is that if you actually go down and talk to these people, this isn't a sort of ethnic assertion.
And you've been to the Canary Wharf protest.
Absolutely, I've gone down there and reported and talked to them. I mean, that's in Tower Hamlets, you probably expect this, but it's much more multiracial than you would expect. Always a small but significant kind of British Bangladeshi cohort, as well as black British mixed race couples. I mean, it's not what is, you know, Clive Lewis's fever dream, to be perfectly frank. And I'm sure around the edges you might see a bit of it on social media here or there, people who are, you know, racist, who are jumping on the bandwagon of these things. That is not
what's motivating these people
on the whole. So I think there's people would do well to actually talk to some of these individuals, and they might be surprised that they don't always fit the caricature.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to say, by the way, we spoke to Orla Millehane, who is a Reform candidate but one of the protest organisers at Epping, and her friend, fellow organiser Sarah, we saw her being arrested by the police, really manhandled, 5'3" woman, just for putting up a Union Jack flag at the council offices, some Section 14 order to stop them from going near a public building when it wasn't open, and not to damage it, which I find very strange. She was held by the police for the best part of 24 hours, but she was released yesterday. Been in touch with her. Hopefully going to be speaking to her on the show tomorrow when she's finished dealing with the lawyers. Anyway, 10:27 is the time. Love to hear from you, in particular about channel migrants. 3,567 of them have arrived since the government's one-in, one-out returns deal was announced, but zero have departed. I'd love to hear your reaction to that. Also, perhaps your birthday wishes for Keir Starmer, and what do you think Phase 2 is about, because we're on day 2 of Phase 2 of presumably Starmer's year 0. I want to know what does that mean for the British people and indeed our country. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Talk.
About some tinkering around family applications from asylum seekers. People actually are probably running out of patience to hear about any more asylum seekers, never mind their families. I think people are just sick of the whole concept of it, not because we are not, as a nation, pretty generous and wanting to help the world's most oppressed, but because this system has been so systematically abused and exploited that it's lost all credibility.
During those so-called austerity years. Look, the state needs to learn how to live within its means. You can't keep coming back for more tax. And there isn't just nasty people like me saying that, not that I'm nasty, but many of your listeners will think that I am. It's the good burgers of the OBR now, the Office for Budget Responsibility. It's people like Professor Jajit Chadha, you know, the former head of the National Institute, the most respected think tank in Britain, who gave me an interview on my When the Facts Change Substack last week.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:31 is the time. In the next half hour, we are going to be talking to my old mucker, Yvonne Ridley, pro-Palestinian activist, as you all know. We've had various conversations about what's been going on in Israel and Gaza, and I think it'll be worth staying tuned for that, folks. I can't think of anyone I disagree with more on this issue than actual Hamas, I think. But we're talking to her in a few moments about that Gaza Greta flotilla, which has finally set sail, having been set back by the wind. You've got to see the funny side. So that and more on those visas for Gaza students as well. First up, though, let's take a quick call. Nigel is on the line and he's in Portsmouth. Nigel, you, I'm sure, would like to welcome these all these visas for all these people coming from abroad to this country, particularly students from Gaza.
Of course, definitely. Roll out the red carpet. I'm sure we'll kind of put them in the Grosvenor Hotel on Park Lane or something.
Oh, don't give them ideas, mate. They'll probably do that.
No. Anyway, you mentioned earlier something about, tin pot. We're not a tin pot country where your visa is on a bit of paper, all that kind of stuff. My wife is from one of those kind of countries, Togo in West Africa. Yeah. Togo is basically military dictator. The guy running it, his father ran it for 30 years, no elections. Yeah. Oh, we let them into the Commonwealth a couple of years ago, by the way, but that's by the by. Yep. So it is just one of those countries that the visa is all online. You need a visa to go into the country. You need a visa to leave the country. Mm-hmm. So, and if the police are after you, you cannot leave. It's so much more advanced than we have. And this is I think it's the fourth poorest country in Africa. And they still manage it. They manage it. And when you apply, and it's so noticeable how advanced their visa system is compared to ours. Yeah. I mean, we try going into that country illegally, and they're not an island. There are points you can cross the border. Good luck. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure people will be trying to. But that, as you say, it's not beyond the wit of man. But of course, you know what the solution is going to be for all the problems we've got here. It's going to be digital ID cards, because that's always the problem. And then they're going to be under the illusion that the people who are currently employing people who've come here illegally are going to miraculously start checking for digital ID cards. I mean, it's insane. These people are absolutely bonkers.
The crazy thing is, Julia, we all know where people are working on the black market. I just see it every day. Yeah. I see it every day. I see the building sites that just have migrant workers, and they're clear. There's in Chichester, there's a supermarket that has a hand car wash. When a police car pulls into the car park, they all leg it. All gone. They all leg it.
Exactly. It's almost like maybe the police should turn up not in a police car and perhaps not in uniform. Maybe they might actually find some. Nigel, appreciate your call. Voice of sanity, obviously. I'm asking you to get in touch also about these migrants arriving on the one-in, one-out return deal with France. 3,567. 0 have so far been deported. Promise, though, by the end of the month, on the 30th of September, they'll finally get one out. Jane says, a joke. One in, one out assumes the same numbers, and that is not what Britain needs. Look to the US, Australia and others. It's not perfect, but a lot better than what we have. Ellie, even the illegals know the British government is talking rubbish. And Dan says, waiting for Farage, and if he doesn't do it, then expect the majority of people to take control of the UK. Numbers matter. Not at all surprised, says Matt, just angry. And John says, what happens when all the hotels are full and there are no more rental homes left to use? Will our government force UK citizens into tents and eventually even force us to hand over our homes? Again, stop giving them ideas. Perhaps the Deputy Prime Minister is already running a pilot scheme by buying up houses for them. Loving your work, John. Thank you very much. 10:35 is the time. Take a quick break. Up next, former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Delighted to welcome Trevor Kavanagh to the show, former political editor of The Sun. A very good morning to you.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I just want to give you an opportunity, first of all, to wish both Keir Starmer happy birthday for today. It's his 63rd birthday. But also, for you, hopefully, with all due respect, you've been around a long time. You've counted them in. You've counted them out. Were you aware at any point since July the 4th last year that we were in phase 1 of this Labour government? And did you know that phase 2 started yesterday before the PM told us?
Well, I thought we were told that they were going to hit the ground running and put everything right. And, well, so far they put everything wrong, haven't they? I mean, the problem we've got is that we've elected a government that doesn't believe in any of the things that we wanted done. Things like law and order and defending our borders.
Silly old-fashioned things. Those extreme right things.
The sort of things that governments are supposed to do. But worst of all, running the economy. I mean, they are running the economy into the ground.
Well, certainly. But were you, I mean, again, the phase 2 thing, complete new revelation to all of us in this rather sort of David Brent-style video the Prime Minister put out yesterday. But this came after we had this mini reshuffle. A few people shuffled around. Largely people, I mean, I doubt if, with all due respect to him, Darren Jones is a name in his own household, let alone in most people's households. But the general reading of what happened in terms of the communications people who are out, the communications people who are in, people very much, from your and my era when we were first, around doing political coverage, people like Tim Allen, you worked with Tony Blair in the run-up to the 97 election, but also people being moved in and out of the Treasury. Do you read from this that the Prime Minister is basically trying to wrest control of the budget from Rachel Reeves? And if so, is that a good idea, given what an absolute disaster it's likely to be next month?
Well, I think what we're watching is a Prime Minister in a state of blind panic. And the reshuffle has done nothing to shore up any sort of feeling of confidence in this government. What it has done at a stroke has totally undermined the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the impression of how much of a grip she's got on the economy, which in fact she doesn't, but now we all know. I mean, when we saw her blubbing in the House of Commons a few weeks ago, I said that basically we were watching a dead woman walking, because there was no way she was going to recover from that. It was a total catastrophe in terms of public perception. And what's happened is that we're now seeing her hung out to dry while being replaced by a little cohort of people, as you say, most of whom we don't know, who are rallying to the side of Keir Starmer to put things right. And in fact, it's almost impossible to see how they can. All of them, the common denominator, every single one of them, is that they all want to raise taxes on the wealthy, or anybody else, in fact, not just the wealthy, because it all trickles down into everybody else.
Well, also, there aren't enough wealthy people, and certainly won't be in a year's time after any budget, they'll all have scarpered, to actually pay for all the things that are going on. Do you feel at all sorry for Rachel Reeves? I mean, even though a lot of her predicament, frankly, is her own mess. She over-egged her own CV, so clearly actually wasn't the hotshot she claimed to have been, not even the hotshot chess prodigy she claimed to have been, for goodness sake. But also, a lot of the economic mess we are in, a lot of it is from what the Tories did, but also things like the Ukraine war and sanctions and the cost of furlough over COVID. Those are Tory policies, supported by Labour, but Tory policies. But actually things like the national insurance hike, a tax on jobs, and all the fuss they've got in over, winter fuel and all the U-turns, that actually an awful lot of the difficulty she's in are entirely of her own making.
Yes, I agree with that. And of course, it's Labour's own making. The problem we've got is not just the fact that taxes are too high, it's that public spending is too high.
Yeah.
And this government is fundamentally opposed to any form of reduction in that public spending level. Indeed, they wanted to rise further. We simply cannot afford it. We have a public sector debt now of close on £3 trillion, which is equivalent to everything that we make and sell in this country. Every economic output that we put in this country is matched by debt, which is going up in the cost to this country and taxpayers as interest rates rise, because the people who lend us that money have lost faith in this Labour government.
Yeah, and that's the real concern, because it's going up and up and up, and we are getting into some very dangerous territory. You know, when our cost of servicing our debt costs, it costs more than Greece or Italy, and we can see actually a lot of the problems that France is facing. And we've got, this confidence vote in the French Prime Minister next week. You can see yet another French government falling. You get a lot of other countries are in that mess, but we're in Britain and we get to control what happens here in Britain. Is there any hope that there's stuff they could do in the budget next month? I'm expecting this week, I think, to get a date for that budget. But an awful lot of businesses saying, look, we're not hiring, we're not investing, we're staying, basically just sitting on our hands till we see how bad the budget is. Is there anything that she can do in the budget that could, forget her career, shore up the government, but could actually help the British economy? Or is everything, do you think, that they're looking at, some of this actually going to do more harm? Oh, Trevor, have you frozen? Have we lost him? Oh no, we will try and get Trevor back. That's the big concern, isn't it? Because actually, when Tom Slater, Tom Slater, we've just got Trevor back. Good, we got you back. I was just saying, do you think everything she's going to end up doing in the budget is actually going to deliver more harm? Because we can talk about migrants and immigration, but one of the reasons why that's come to the fore is because of the financial cost of it all.
Well, yes, the costs that this government is clocking up are absolutely gigantic, and they will rise thanks to their handling of the economy, and inflation in particular, allied with the glorious Bank of England's clumsy handling of the issue. Inflation is going to rise further, and this is the month, September, upon which the inflation figures will decide the next year's pension rate. It will go up more. It was just over 1% last year. It's going to go up by at least 4% this year. And that's a huge additional hike on everything, and not only the state pension, it is public sector pensions, which are around 2 trillion liabilities. These are costs which simply pile up on top of everything else that's going wrong. Yeah,
without anything extra being achieved. Without, we're not getting extra, new airport or a new reservoir or a new gas-powered, factory or anything. There's just nothing to show for it, but we're all everything's costing more. What do you make then? We are talking a lot of the time about this migrant issue. We're talking an awful lot about, the illegal immigration. We got today this channel migrants since this one in, one out policy. Thousands have arrived. Not a single one has gone. We're told by the end of September someone should be gone. But by the way, someone else would come in and they can bring their family. It'll end up being more people. Are we right to focus on that over and above the economy right now?
Well, the two things are linked. And in fact, the problem of illegal immigration, as you know, has now completely trumped the economy, even though people are having a cost of living crisis which won't go away. They are more obsessed now with the images of people coming across in these boats and just simply marching in uninvited to this country. And we've lost sight, of course, of the fact that another third of the migrant intake is still going on through trucks, lorries, caravans, and ferries. Yeah. So this is only the visible. We've lost sight of those people. Yeah. And I think that this is seriously a major problem for the social fabric of this country as people begin to actually stand up and protest.
So is that the problem, or is the problem extremists waving their flags and trying to intimidate people? And according to Labour MP Clive Lewis, very much on the left, he's a Labour MP for Norwich South, trying to mark territory. What do you make of his claims?
Well, I don't like to see these masked protesters. No,
I don't want anyone being masked on our streets.
Whether they're on the left or the right. And in fact, I think police should act immediately to arrest anybody standing on a protest line wearing a face-obscuring mask of any sort. Yep. And it is true that these are a minority. The vast majority of people in this country who have strong views on immigration are, in fact, mostly the silent majority. And these people who are causing trouble on the sidelines are trying to discredit the actual valid protests that these citizens are making about this government's handling of the problem.
Absolutely. Trevor Kavanagh, always good to talk to you, former political editor of The Sun. This is Talk. Up next, we're going to be talking to pro-Palestinian activist Yvonne Ridley. You don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
I'd be depressed if I was going to be deported because I supported a prescribed terrorist group. I think that's a rather silly thing to have done. But I think, honestly, the fact that we have this drip feeding of stories, and it's almost every day that we have a story of an example of somebody not being able to be deported because of some very silly reason. There was the example, wasn't there, the other day of the Pakistani gentleman who had broken the law several times and was going to be deported, but he can't be deported to Pakistan because he is an alcoholic and alcohol is banned in Pakistan. And you were sat there going, oh, for heaven's sake.
I think calling her Big Ange is actually less insulting than you calling her a grandmother. Quite clearly, she is not. Maybe she's technically a grandmother.
I'm a grandfather.
I think it's demeaning to her and her status to call her a grandmother. She is a deputy prime minister, and she certainly doesn't look like a granny to me. So can we agree that is? I think that's a bit sexist, actually, Jeremy.
You're joking.
Just gonna come out with that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and this is Talk. Let's talk right now about, well, various stories in relation to Gaza. First up, they expedited, according to the Home Secretary, I didn't know we expedited anything in this country. I made it actually happen and work efficiently. UK visa scheme being set up for students from Gaza and other young people fleeing the war there. Let's talk to pro-Palestinian activist Yvonne Ridley about that. Good morning to you, Yvonne.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to take a deep breath before this. I'm not entirely sure that we want to have a bunch of people, whether they're studying for a master's degree or not, coming from Gaza to come and study in this country. If we're going to be getting people out of Gaza, a war-torn region, state, whatever you like to call it right now, should they be the priority?
Well, when you look at the quality of the students that we're talking about students that have won scholarships to Ivy League universities, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. These are incredibly bright, gifted, talented people, and anywhere else in the world that they would be welcomed with open arms. But unfortunately, because it's Gaza, and they're not white, and they're not
white. That's why
there is sadly this.
Isn't it a concern that we're talking about people living in an area where they have been subjected to the most extraordinary propaganda from Hamas terrorists, and people are understandably wary about people coming from that region and possibly staying and then bringing their families along, and people are saying, I'm not sure we want these people here. I mean, Egypt don't want them. Jordan don't want any more of them. The Saudis don't want them. The Qataris only want the very rich ones, the billionaire leaders of Hamas, the Palestinians, those ones. They don't want ordinary Palestinians. Why did those countries not want them?
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Well, we know why they don't want them, don't we?
We should welcome these students because across the whole, out of the whole of the Middle East, the most brightest, intelligent students actually come from Palestine.
What a ridiculous statement to make. How do you know that? And anyway, how are they able to study so well, given they've been living in a starving occupation and in an open prison for the last 20 years, we've been told by people like you?
They see education as an act of resistance.
Brilliant.
And that's why some of the most brightest intelligence minds in the Middle East come from Gaza.
So being subjugated by the Israeli state makes you brighter?
On education.
So no, you said it makes them brighter. You said they're brighter because they've been resisting, or they're resisting presumably the Israeli state. So are they brighter because of the Israeli state subjugating them?
No, not at all. The Israeli state has contributed nothing positive towards the occupation of Gaza.
They've been providing electricity, clean water, aid. They've done lots over the years.
Well, I said to you last time, Julia, aid was not getting in, and I was right.
No, over the last 20 years since they left. They've been occupied by Hamas. They've been in charge of Gaza, not Israelis.
It's not occupied by Hamas. It's occupied by Israel. And
Israeli troops left in the mid-2000s. Hamas have been in charge. The elected in the mid-2000s, not elected in the last 20 years, but...
Democratically elected in 2000.
And for a 20-year term, it would appear.
Yes. Well,
do you consider that the legitimate government of Gaza?
Very hard to hold an election during a war.
There wasn't a war for 20 years. There wasn't a war on October the 6th.
Sorry?
There wasn't a war on October the 6th, 2023.
There was a brutal occupation. Don't you read your history?
No, there wasn't an occupation. The Israelis left in 2005. There was an election in 2006.
They occupied the land, the sea.
No, they didn't. No, there were no Israeli forces in Gaza.
Cannot move around freely, even when Israel wasn't physically there.
They were still occupying it. So Israel is able to be both there and not there. They're Schrodinger's state, aren't they?
If you had visited Gaza during the Hamas rule, you would see that it is occupied by the air. There is an airport there which has been bombed to hell, and you can't fly into Gaza. There is a port, a seaport there, which has been there for years, and you can't sail.
And why did the Israelis make that access so difficult? Any thoughts on that?
Because they want to ethnically cleanse and wipe out.
Because Hamas was bringing in items to be used as weapons against Israel. You know that perfectly well. What do you make of Greta Thunberg and her mates off on another flotilla trip from Barcelona? They left on Sunday to go to Gaza. They had to turn back because there was too much wind. You couldn't make that up. They've now set off again yesterday, heading over to Gaza. They say they're bringing aid. Of course, they're not bringing much aid. There's more food on there for them than there is aid they're actually going to take. They hope to actually get to Gaza this time. The Israelis have said, if you try and get into our waters or even the waters around Gaza, we will arrest you. And this time, you're going to go to some prisons that you may not want to stay in. You won't be quickly deported. Is that legitimate? Is that justifiable?
Well, in a few hours' time, I will be flying from Manchester to Tunisia, and I am joining the flotilla. And furthermore, Italian dock workers have said, if Israel touches one boat in this flotilla, which is going to have hundreds of boats, by the way, if Israel touches one, they will shut down all of Europe. This is called solidarity, international community coming together for the people of Palestine. Israel is going to get so spanked, which is why it is accelerating its genocidal behaviour.
Genocidal. We haven't got time for all of that nonsense. Do you think that the Israelis should let Greta and her mates arrive in Gaza and maybe leave them in Gaza?
Well, I will be on that flotilla, and if I'm left in Gaza, I won't be afraid, other than for the Israelis. What will be interesting is I'll be the first Western journalist allowed into Gaza.
No Western journalists have been into Gaza. They've been embedded with the IDF, same as any other war zone.
Well, we've seen the embedded IDF. They're not allowed to talk to the Palestinians. They're not allowed to film.
Well, I know people like Andrew Fox who've been in, and they've been in with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and they've spoken to local people. I know a number of people who've been in who've been able to do that. So that's simply not true.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which doesn't photograph any of its aid workers, doesn't photograph any of the recipients of the aid workers, and is being assisted in security by ISIS recruits, recruited by ex-convict Yasser al-Habab, who comes from a very large family in Rafah.
Well, you either want people to get aid or you don't want people to get aid. It seems to me that most people on your side of the debate would rather there wasn't any aid going in, because it gives you a bit more of a cause. Look, we'll have to do this again. Well, what day are you actually flying out to join this flotilla?
More than 1,000 people have died.
No, I've only got about...
trying to collect aid.
Yep.
That is not how you deliver aid.
Oh, yeah, OK. Yvonne, when are you leaving to go and get on this flotilla?
And that's something else.
When are you leaving? I've got 10 seconds left. When are you leaving to get on this flotilla?
I am leaving to go on the flotilla. I'll be on the
Oh, OK, I'm not going to get an answer in time. We're going to get to sort of... Tell my producers so we can actually... we'll talk to you again before and get a bit more detail and we'll just have someone to do the fact-checking. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's just coming up 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. I always have a deep sigh after conversations with Yvonne Ridley. I've known that woman for many, many years, but absolutely lost the plot when it comes to Gaza. She's heading off on that flotilla next week and joining Greta. Rather her than me. We'll see if we can get her on before then and have a bit more of a proper chat. But again, you have to have a fact checker in for literally every random thing that is claimed that just simply isn't true. But there we are. Whether you are listening to us on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or you're connected to us, thank you so much for your company. If you've just tuned in, if you missed any of the last hour, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about the Channel migrants. So in that returns deal, of course, where we're told that one in, one out, that was a deal done in July with Emmanuel Macron. But yesterday, the Home Secretary, Vaping, Cooper, had to admit that actually not a single Channel migrant has yet been returned to France, despite being told it would happen within weeks. But 3,567 illegal migrants have arrived on the Channel boats. That doesn't include, as Trevor Kavanagh pointed out a little bit earlier, all the people who've arrived illegally through other means, and lorries sneaking in the back of cars and all of that on the trains, but also all the people who've overstayed their student visas or their tourist visas. But there we are. Vaping Cooper now says she expects deportations to begin later this month. So we'll see about that. Meanwhile, she has announced a temporary suspension of the refugee family reunion scheme, meaning that migrants who are granted asylum will be temporarily banned. how long, we don't know, from bringing family members to the UK. And meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch, remember her, the Tory leader? Well, she's got a big speech today. It was all trailed in the papers on Saturday. But she's going to accuse Labour of treating the North Sea as a relic of the past, as she pledges to make Scottish oil and gas a cornerstone of the British economy if she's elected. Also, the government is changing the law to stop the Sentencing Council from issuing new guidelines to courts in England and Wales without explicit approval from the Justice Secretary. I do not know why the Sentencing Council should be an independent quango of any sort at all. As usual, as all these quangos are basically made up of Blairite lefties. But the change comes after that backlash earlier in the year between the Sentencing Council and the government, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, over pre-sentence reports for offenders from minority groups, basically saying, really, if you come from an ethnic minority or you're trans or anything like that, you should probably serve a shorter sentence than if you were, say, white or straight. So we'll be talking about all of that. Also, latest revelations today that government's long-term borrowing costs are now the highest since about 1986, but we've got a hell of a lot more debt now, so it makes it even more of an issue. The huge number of billions we are paying every single year just to pay interest on our debt. But that latest figure has meant that the value of the pound has sunk once again. Yay, it all just gets happier and happier in what we now know is day 2 of phase 2 of Keir Starmer's, well, return to government and of Labour government, and I think Mao-style Chinese year 0, which I think is what he was hoping for. Change is what we were promised, and change we are certainly getting. Not necessarily for the better. He didn't specify that, to be fair to him. It wasn't a lie. But one of the particular things we want to hear from you about is the 0 deportations, despite 3,500 Channel migrants arriving in this country since that one-in, one-out deal, which doesn't even remotely tackle the issues British people have on illegal migration. But what's your reaction to that news? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text 87222, send us a message on X at Talk TV. Don't forget that calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. Of course, messages on Twitter are free. Key thing is, you have to keep them clean, all your messages, otherwise I can't read them out. In particular, if you want to wish the Prime Minister birthday wishes. What is the gift you would like to give the Prime Minister? Because today is his 63rd birthday. Also, as I say, day 2 of phase 2 of this Labour government. Delighted to say that Tom Slater joins me still for the rest of the show, editor of Spiked Online. Tom, I know you want to share in birthday wishes for the Prime Minister, but also you're as perplexed as I am about this whole phase 2, day 2, phase 2 of this Labour government, because as Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, pointed out, this government said they were going to hit the ground running because there was so much they wanted to deliver. But it turns out not so much phase 1. Was anything achieved in phase 1 that we can point to?
We racked up loads more debt.
Yep, well done.
We tried and failed to make some pretty minor trims to various parts of the welfare budget. A lot more people were locked up for tweets, as far as I can tell. That's carried on unabated, although that's not necessarily directed by the government itself. So,
Isn't it though?
Well, there's suspicions, isn't there?
Law and order sorted.
That's been absolutely sorted. Yep, I haven't seen an act of shoplifting for at least 2 or 3 hours, so that's better than it used to be. That's true. That's true.
Has no one stolen anything from the fridge?
I have, but I didn't want to say anything.
But I mean, I'm getting, illegal migration, that's sorted.
Yep.
I would say phase 1, remarkable success. This does remind me ever so slightly. I remember doing history A level, and we were talking about, when everyone had to report to Stalin in the 30s on, pig iron production up 4,500%, and they would just say whatever you just said, whatever, and everyone had to believe and clap, and George Orwell, based, 1984 on a lot of what was going on in Stalinist Russia, where the lies, the propaganda, the nonsense, and that's the territory we are in, isn't it? So this one-in, one-out migrant deal fiasco, don't worry, it's going to start within weeks. It's all going to be fine. We're going to stop a few families who granted asylum from bringing their families, a few people bringing their families here. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Pig iron production is up 4,500%.
It's like that, and yet with the goals are even more meagre and pointless. It's like we've got the breakfast clubs up and running. We've managed to secure a deal with France, which, if we're lucky could mean 50 people going back a week in the context
but
when you've
50
got
people
hundreds.
coming here with their families.
Absolutely, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, the fact that he's got to, excuse me, constantly kind of talk about his successes and then not really have many successes to point to really shows how little has been achieved. And that's one thing. Things have gotten worse. In many different measures. We could talk about the economy, certainly, but also they're struggling to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that is really striking.
No
about this
vision
they can't
and no
act
competence
at all.
Yeah.
So that's going to
But whenever I've seen lists put out by some Labour activists about all the things achieved by Labour, there'll be pages and pages, and it will do things like setting up a review of blah blah blah, a commission into that public inquiry into child grooming. Anyone? Where's that? Who's in charge of it? When are they starting taking witnesses? Where, I mean, nothing actually happens.
Yeah, what they have done, and reading and trying to stay awake whilst reading about the reshuffle this week, is that there's been all of this effort put into kind of internal processes. We've got the delivery boards, and we've got the delivery office, and we've got 30 civil servants.
And the director of delivery.
The director of delivery and the assistant to the director of delivery and the arbitrator of the director of delivery when he's on holiday. Like all these kind of different kind of positions
they love a
which
job
have been
title,
created.
don't they?
And they haven't delivered anything. Apart from more of the same and
do
things
they know
getting
what
worse.
they want to live? I mean, that's the thing, you get into these existential things, because fundamentally it's like when they announce anything to do with migration and you just think, oh, no, do you see how you've missed the point? And again, it's like, we want the asylum hotels closed. Yes, that's what we'd like. But not to put them into local housing, or as we discussed on the show yesterday, a local, £300,000, townhouse that a family would desperately want to move into. That's not what we want. We want them not here. We want them in a camp, detained, and then we want them not here in another country. It's like they kind of always tackle the other end of the problem. When we were discussing on the show yesterday, it seems to me so much of what they do, they think, like, for instance, the problems in the reshuffle, there was more reshuffling of communications officers in number 10 than there was of actual ministers or cabinet ministers yesterday. No one has heard of any of these people, but they've all abjectly failed. But they think it's a communications issue, and it isn't. It's the policy issue. And this was the same that Kamala Harris, the Democrat candidate to the American election in 2024, and so many Democrats saying, "Oh, it was the communication." No, it was her and what she believed and what she wanted to do, and her track. It was all actual real stuff that people object. People aren't stupid. They're not going, oh, if only I knew more about Labour's achievements, then I would be really supporting them. Yeah. There's a reason why you've got Reform on, 35% in the polls, 15 points ahead of Labour only a year after a general election. It's because people actually want some tangible action done. And they're still not seeing it from the Tories and can be made not. They're talking. They're in the right direction on net zero. They're in the right direction on the trans stuff. They're in the right direction on immigration stuff. But they're not there yet. And people are going, no, we've known about all these problems for a long time. We want some tangible, real, factual things that you will do.
No, absolutely. And I think that the Tories have sort of allowed Reform to steal a march on them to a large degree because...
I mean, shockingly so.
So this announcement about net zero, we knew they were going in this direction. Similarly with the announcement about the ECHR, we know they're heading towards that kind of position, pulling out. But because they've insisted they needed to wait months to go through these policy reviews... Yeah. And on one hand, you get that. You want it to be a credible plan.
But why does it take months?
At the same time, you can announce your intention. You can sketch out the details later. So they've kind of allowed themselves to just be pipped to the post by Farage on many different issues. Or, quite frankly, they just look like they're playing catch-up because net zero, for instance, Reform have been pretty firmly against for quite some time. And we're talking about it when the Tories were just saying, oh, we just need to push back some of the dates. And we need to
by a couple of years. Yeah, absolutely.
So
a load of absolute nonsense. By the way, if you're getting very excited right now, because I'm sure you are, the Green Party are about to announce the new party leadership. I know, so exciting. Meanwhile, I want to play you back. I played it earlier on just because it makes me chuckle. Keir Starmer, I promise it's short. You know I never do this to you unless it's short. You know the deal. I'm on your side. But, if you want to have a quick nap, 35 seconds, you've got a nap, just close your eyes, take a breath. But
you will be able to nod off.
You will be able to nod off. This is Keir Starmer, channeling his inner David Brent, talking about phase 2 of his government that we didn't know we were in phase 1, but apparently we were in. Have a listen and a watch. Or not, as the case may be. Can we not play it? Oh, we can't play it. It won't start playing. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Oh, well, we'll try and play it again a little bit.
Phase 2 is stalled already.
Phase 2. Are we in phase 3 now?
That was quick.
We might be in phase 3.
Yeah, maybe.
What I love is I want someone to ask him how long is phase 2?
Yeah.
What are you going to get done in phase 2?
Phase 1 went very slowly for me. Felt like a lot longer.
It was a long year, wasn't it? It was a long year and 2 months. But anyway, look, let's talk about that migrant deal fiasco. When the Mail, papers like that, and they put this stuff on their front pages week after week, you know something is going on. Oh, hello! We've just got big news from the Green Party. Zach Polanski has been elected leader of the Green Party. I thought he was the director. No, not him. Not that one. No, not Roman Polanski. Zach Polanski has been elected. Now there was a sort of a duo, current joint leader and someone else. I don't know their names. Of course, I don't know who these people are. I've got a life and Netflix to watch. I've got things to do. I've got paint to watch dry. They had run as an alternative. And this guy, Zach Polanski, has just been announced as the new Green Party leader. Now, the key thing about him is that he has basically left the road open for doing possibly a deal at some point with Jeremy Corbyn's new party, Your Party, as we think it's called this week. What do you make of that? Because this might be quite good fun to watch, mightn't it?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, Zach Polanski was very much trying to, I suppose, make the Green Party a more explicitly left-wing
they weren't already?
but I suppose kind of more aggressively so, more clear-cut socialist. I mean, it's the sort of thing where the Green Party, or whatever socialist means these days, but the Green Party has often kind of been able to play both sides. You could kind of pick up some support in kind of rural areas on just pure kind of conservation issues, but you could also pick up votes in Bristol and Brighton for people who feel that the Labour Party is insufficiently left-wing or insufficiently anti-Semitic, as is sometimes the case these days. So he's very much kind of that bent. He calls it kind of eco-populism, need to take the fight to reform, be more brash, very much open to working with Your Party, the Zara Sultana, Jeremy Corbyn party, whatever it's going to eventually be called, and is also an interesting character. And I use that term advisedly. He's a kind of classic Green as far as a lot of kind of strange, kooky views over the years. Famously, about 10 years ago, he had a hypnotherapy business which he was convinced he could help women's breasts grow through the power of his mind and suggestions. So this is the kind of character that we're dealing with, and it's who knows what could happen. I think people sometimes underscore the threat posed both by Your Party and the Greens if they get their act together, because there's a lot of people who think of themselves as very left-wing students and young people.
But do they actually turn out to vote?
Yeah, exactly. That is the question. But it could be a problem for them. And also combine that with the Gaza issue. You are talking about genuine electoral
they're
issues
kind of combining the Gaza Party, Jeremy Corbyn's party and the Green Party. And if he did agree to do some sort of deal, and interesting actually, just looking at the votes, Green Party membership is about 64,000. The other candidates who are Ellie Chowns, but also Adrian Ramsey. Adrian Ramsey was the current co-leader with Carla Denyer. They got 3,705 votes. Zach Polanski, this is overwhelming, 20,411 votes. So, I mean, he's got a big mandate from his party membership. No, exactly. And it's much clearer to have one leader as well. I'm sorry.
That job share thing they've been doing.
And you're a small party. I think I'm not sure you're in so much demand you can't manage the job on your own. But he's not an MP. He's a member of the London Assembly. But it is interesting when you look at the split on the right with Reform and the Tories, but now they're split on the left between Labour Party, you've got, Green Party, Labour Party, the Green Party, in lots of ways very similar. And you've got, the Lib Dems as well. You've got, the Your Party, the Corbyn Party, and you've got, the Gaza lot who are going to basically join in with Corbyn. There's quite a lot of splits there, and depending on how much they work together at the next election, their ability to then do the same thing that all previous incumbents of Nigel Farage's parties, their ability to prevent a Labour candidate being elected. I mean, we are in really, I would say, fun territory because this gives power back to the voters.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've ended up with a kind of European continent style array of parties, but under a two-party first past the post.
I never want to change the two-party system.
So it's a really unpredictable situation. I mean, but part of the problem
not two-party, sorry, but the first past the post system, I mean,
exactly. It's one of those things where that can make it really unpredictable as well, because you've got multiple parties operating under first past the post, which can really make election results difficult to call. But I think this is in response to the fact that the two main parties in particular have failed their respective constituencies. They've completely deserved the drubbings that they've received in recent years. and people are looking around for alternatives. And even though I think this alternative is mental, that doesn't mean that it's not one that some people are interested in. So.
I try not to be political in this. I do not try. I mean, some of their policies are properly mental. And what's fascinating is they're supposed to be cuddly, the Greens. So they're nice people, aren't they? Because the left is nice. Actually, the policies they push. I mean, you think Labour and the Tories are insane on net zero. This lot, wow. I mean, they're borderline, just stop oil. And in terms of that sort of stuff, in terms of what they want to do to control people's lives and to limit people's lives, what they can do, what can they spend their money on, whether they can travel, where they can travel, how they can travel, what they can eat, their willingness to do that is really, I mean, it's sinister. All sort of very green environment. I mean, all environmental parties are fundamentally, it's that watermelon thing. They're green on the outside, they are blood red on the inside. They are full on lefties.
Well, I think it's even worse than that. I think they just want to drag us back to like feudalism. I don't even think it's a kind of there's some secretive communist agenda so much as it is. They just really don't understand how the modern world works. They really don't understand that people want their lives to get better. They really don't understand that people being able to fly around the world and enjoy themselves is actually seen as a positive amongst the very voters that they claim to want to represent. So it's but it's oddly mainstream,
fossil fuels as reason why we're all alive this long. I'm 57. I'd have died by 30 if we didn't have fossil fuels because of medicine. And when you go into a hospital, you'll be amazed how much plastic is used, guys. How do you make plastic? Oh, fossil fuels. This phone I've got. Everything we're doing here. This is all from fossil fuels. It's not generated by wind, apart from what we say. It really is mind-blowing. But anyway, congratulations, Zach Polanski. Do come on the show. Love to have a chat with you.
King of the Cranks.
King of the Cranks. Yeah, that's not going to help me get him on, is it? For goodness sake.
I said that, you didn't.
But okay.
But look up the hypnosis thing. It's fascinating.
Oh no, I know the hypnosis story. Yeah. Look, I also want to talk also about experts have been calling for a global ban on vapes. They say we've got the data. We know they're not harmless. Issues in terms of there's cancer, but heart disease and things like that. Now, I know you're an ex-smoker. You're now a vapor.
Yep.
I remember thinking, when you finally gave in, you and Chris Snowden, Minister of Economic Affairs, when you two moved on to vapes, I thought, right, well, they're vapes of the future. I'm really very anti-smoking. That's the one thing I'm very nanny state about. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to smell it. Even if you're smoking outside this building, could you stay outside for another half an hour and get it out of the smell of you? You get in the lift and everyone stinks. But, if you want to smoke and kill yourself, it's entirely up to you as far as I'm concerned. It's not my problem. But vaping, I thought, was a great thing because if it fulfills all the urges people have, to actually the actual act of smoking gives you the nicotine hit you want, but it's much safer, even if it's not completely safe. But then neither is drinking a can of Coca-Cola or having a McDonald's. So it seems to me that, or having a drink, it was better than that. But do you think this is just hysteria from the medical profession?
Almost certainly. And actually, there's been a bit of a fight going on amongst public health bodies and medical professionals. In the UK, we've actually been relatively sensible on this up until this point. The NHS was happily saying quite recently that vapes are at least 95% safer, which is almost certainly a conservative estimate. And also, they just work. I mean, the fact that the vast majority of people I know who used to smoke, who managed to get off it's via vapes in a way that no other
virtually every smoker I know has moved,
It just works. There is a problem with younger people insofar as some of them are starting to vape. Incidentally, not going on to smoke, just vaping. In and of itself, do you want kids, particularly if they're under the age of 18, consuming lots of nicotine? Obviously not.
No, but it is illegal for them to buy.
It is illegal. You can crack down on that. And also, to be honest, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively nice problem to have.
In my day, people sniffed glue. No, I mean,
a lot worse for them.
But also, it's quite of evidence.
Lethal.
There's a certain percentage of kids who will do these things anyway. What would you prefer that they did?
Exactly.
Choose your poison in that respect, isn't it? That's the thing. But just finally, we didn't get a chance for you to come back on talking to Yvonne Ridley, who's a pro-Palestine activist, going to join the flotilla with Greta. She's flying out to Tunisia to join them, and then they head to Gaza. Again, it's just a load of hot air, although it was a lot of wind that have turned them back after their first big fanfare of them going out. Once again, Greta, in all of her interviews, spouting as much nonsense as she talks about the environment. I mean, this is a woman who, and she's a woman, not a girl, by the way, everybody. She's a grown woman. She literally knows nothing about anything. She should have spent time at school and not truanting and doing protests. But she's been feted by everybody. But now she's turned out to be a full-on, full-on massive, lefty, not just environmentalist, but also every latest fashionable cause. And what a surprise, Gaza is the cause. With a We Are All Palestine Action T-shirt on, not illegal in other countries, but they basically want to get themselves arrested by the Israeli government, don't they? And they will be taken by the Israeli government. The Israeli government has basically said, we're going to put you in a pretty nasty prison along with terrorists and stuff. The people who you claim you support in Gaza, who are running Gaza for the Palestinian people. Is that a good idea from the Israeli government, or are they just doing propaganda for the likes of Greta?
I think it would be playing into their hands. And
Shouldn't they let them just go in?
I mean,
just for a laugh.
The thing is, you can't have just these turnips showing up into a war zone. I mean, it's one of those things where...
but they've chosen to do it.
That's very true, but at the same time, what happens if they, if something happens to them and not because of them being kidnapped by Hamas or whatever, they're in the war zone, bombs are going off. I mean, that would then be written up as the IDF has killed Greta, which is probably what some of these people want.
Hamas, I think, would welcome her with open arms. I mean, if there'll be a ruling like, obviously we want to take her hostage and sexually abuse her and torture her and beat her and starve her like we do with everybody else, we take it.
But they can make exceptions,
make exceptions because she's a propagandist for us. She's on our side.
They just lost their propagandist, didn't they? The Al-Qassam Brigade, Abaid, or whatever his name was pop. So there is an opening.
There's an opening.
So, and she's very media trained, so it all makes sense. Yeah. But I think that what they should do is exactly what they did last time, which is absolutely perfect. Yes, you have to intercept them because this is a war zone. You can't be riding up on your flotilla, sailing up, I should say. They dealt with them. They gave them a sandwich, put them on a plane back, all smiles. I think that's what they've got to do again.
Just keep doing it. Just treat them like the little children that they are.
I mean, they have got enough on their plate, and it's absurd and ridiculous, and just it's an expression of vanity as much as anything else. This flotilla, I think the Israelis would do well, and I think probably will do this, which is just to repeat what they did last time, which I think was a great PR win for them.
Do you remember Greta Thunberg being seen coming out with her hands sort of just quite loose by her side when she was being taken to the airport, and as soon as she saw the cameras, she clasped her hands behind her back as if she was handcuffed, but she wasn't. I mean, the woman is a great actress.
She's
a great actress.
But people fall for it, don't they?
They do. They absolutely do. Keep on going, Greta. Keep on trucking. But the longer she's basically, on the high seas in the Med, for me, the better. 11:27 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. I want to hear from you. Give us a call on all the topics we're talking about, in particular the absolute failure of the one-in, one-out policy, that return deal with France. 3,500 Channel migrants have arrived since that was announced. 0 have left. To be fair, though, on the upside, 0 have actually been given to us in return. So, swings and roundabouts, everybody. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, if you'd like to pass on your birthday greetings to the Prime Minister on his 63rd birthday, or to mark the exciting start of day 2 of phase 2 of this Labour government. Do get in touch as well. This is Talk.
But as Mike and I have always said, you are what you put in your mouth. And I haven't as yet met anybody who doesn't eat a lot that's 25 stone. Or drink a lot.
Well,
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. I could go further. You know, eat less. Exercise more.
Yeah, eat less,
Well, it's not
more.
hard, is it? Oh, I'm a lifestyle expert. How do I improve my life? Look at Mikey. Mikey's changed his life, hasn't he? He's only drinking 4 bottles of red a night now.
I'd be depressed if I was going to be deported because I supported a prescribed terrorist group. I think that's a rather silly thing to have done. But I think, honestly, the fact that we have this drip feeding of stories, and it's almost every day that we have a story of an example of somebody not being able to be deported because of some very silly reason. There was the example, wasn't there, the other day of the Pakistani gentleman who had broken the law several times and was going to be deported, but he can't be deported to Pakistan because he is an alcoholic and alcohol is banned in Pakistan. And you were sat there going, oh, for heaven's sake.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show, 11:31. I know you're all still reeling from the excitement of the Green Party electing their new leader. I know it's too exciting. Hope he'll come on the show. But right now, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. And let's talk to Mark, who is in Lincolnshire. Mark, you'd like to talk about these visas for Gaza students that are going to be expedited, we're told, by the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper.
Indeed. Morning, Julia.
Morning.
Dear me, Ducky, what do we do? Yeah, I mean, this is just...
No, all the sound effects there, that's all you need. Just...
Yeah, honestly, it's mind-boggling. It really is, because, you know, these are people... I don't care what your opinion is on the Palestinians. I mean, I don't like any of them, if I'm quite honest. I'm suspicious of all of them, put it like that. My real issue, to be honest, is these are going to be young people, so these are fairly young people, you know, either 18, 19 or early 20s.
Well, no, a lot of them, I think it's masters and things like that, so they'll be a bit older.
No, my understanding is the first 9 are master students that are being evacuated. So they're coming over. They're going to be fully funded by the Foreign Office anyway, so that's you and I paying for them.
Yeah.
Now, the real issue that I have with anybody coming out of Gaza is these are people that have been indoctrinated for decades into hatred for Jews, hatred for Christians, hatred basically for anybody, including other Muslims. Anybody that isn't them, they hate. We see this, you know, repeatedly. You know, it doesn't matter where they go, what they're doing, it always turns to SH you know what. That's the reality, you know.
Yeah, we're playing bad odds there. But also, that's my thing. Why does the Foreign Office, again, funded by the Foreign Office, funded by the taxpayer, why is the taxpayer funding scholarships for more than 80 students at UK universities from Gaza? Why?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because not only do we have to be forced to pay for hundreds of thousands of illegals in the country, not only do we have to do that, we now have to pay for people who, quite frankly, for all we know, could be bringing terrorist plans for cells in the UK. We have no idea, because at the end of the day, they're going to be under control of Hamas. And as for this biometric testing, that's worth about as much as, you know, a chocolate fireguard to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. This is the thing people don't understand. The do-gooders and the 70 MPs who supported these Gaza scholarships going ahead is being expedited. Yeah, let's prioritise that. That's the number one thing, isn't it? Is that no one is getting out of Gaza without Hamas's permission. They're absolutely in charge. It's just abject nonsense. Why are these people being allowed? Why were they able to apply? And also, why, if we've been told that this country has been living as an open prison for all these years and everything's been terrible, it's amazing how well the universities have been operating so people can win these amazing scholarships, isn't it?
Absolutely, Julia. I mean, you know, anybody would think there wasn't really a war going on in some of the places in Gaza. I mean, who would have thought that? Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you have the whole thing, this whole narrative. I mean, what you're talking to your guest there about with, you know, Greta going over again on the flotilla. Quite frankly, the way I feel about that, Israel would actually do us all a favour if they locked a lot of them up for a few years. That's how I think, because, you know, you can talk about, oh, well, it won't look good press-wise for the Israelis, you know, the PR thing. Well, they're not doing too well at that anyway, because seemingly the Western world absolutely hates them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at this point, does it really matter if they did lock them up?
I can see that. That said, I'm perfectly happy for Greta and all of that lot to spout their abject nonsense, and in my view, hatred. I mean, they're literally doing the work of a terrorist organisation, and antis, and I think a number of people on these boats are. Frankly, they might not like to admit it in polite circles, but they are anti-Semitic. But I don't want people locked up if they're not committing a crime. I'm old-fashioned like that. Mark, I have to leave it there. Duck, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Although I do want to talk in the next hour or so about Graham Linehan, the wonderful Graham Linehan, of course, the fantastic comedy writer who, it turns out, was arrested as he arrived back in the country yesterday over 3 tweets that he posted. We'll talk with Tom Slater. Spiked Online is in the studio about that coming up. Right now, we'll take a quick break, and we're going to be talking about North Sea oil. Turns out the Tories are quite into getting North Sea oil out all again under Kemi Badenoch. But is it too little too late? And do they need to drop net zero entirely? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's still with me. I'll get his thoughts on net zero. I'm pretty sure I know where he stands on this already after our next guest, who is Andrew Montfort. He's the director of Net Zero Watch. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia.
I have to say, it does. You have a very strong feeling these days that an awful lot of the sort of the political world is gradually coming round to our way of thinking, as in net zero is insane, impossible to achieve, undesirable and unaffordable, etc., etc. They seem to be getting there slowly but surely. We've got the Reform Party. We've now got the Tories. They're looking at, we think, possibly dropping net zero, but certainly the announcement today from Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, that basically saying that the Labour Party are treating North Sea as a relic of the past, and she wants to use oil and gas extradition as the cornerstone of our economy. That's a good news story for, well, let's face it, sanity, isn't it?
It is a good news story for sanity, but as you kind of alluded to in your introduction, it may just be too little, too late. The North Sea is in such a state already that I don't know how much we will lose, even if there is a reversal here. But yeah, we should welcome it. The Conservatives have been teetering in this direction. We had Kemi Badenoch's statement a few months back where she said that net zero by 2050 was impossible. Okay, that's something, but it does still sound a little bit like they would still want to do net zero. So
they just sort of push it back a bit. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. But on the other hand, this is clearly recognising the hard facts that we need oil and gas, and we will keep needing oil and gas.
No, we can power everything in this country with a windmill. Andrew, I will not have that climate denier talk on my show.
You're just a heretic there, yes.
I mean, that's the madness, isn't it? That's where we are. So, they're creeping very slowly to it. But we've been hearing lots of reports lately about the Norwegians. I mean, we know they've got this sovereign wealth fund. They didn't just spaff it all up the wall on various, tax cuts and selling off of family silver in the 80s when we had all those amazing tax receipts from North Sea oil. They actually put it into a sovereign wealth fund. We should have thought of that. Okay, we're past the peak, most likely, a long way of North Sea oil and gas extraction. But we know that the Norwegians have found new supplies in areas where we also have access, but we've stopped doing the drilling. I mean, that is crazy because a lot of the time we are still importing oil and gas from Norway when they're getting it from the parts of the sea which we are also entitled to get it from. That just doesn't make sense either on net zero terms or indeed on economy and the balance of trade terms.
Yeah, absolutely, and filling the government coffers as well. Of course, the government is looking at running out of money fairly soon. So some tax revenues from the North Sea really would be quite welcome. And of course, it's not just the North Sea. There's new fields out to the west of Shetland that we've only really just started getting into. There's shale gas across the north of England. There's coal bed methane. There's still coal supplies, and we are going to need fossil fuels for decades to come. So this is just a reflection of reality. But I think we still have to worry about the Green Tories, because the Green Tories, I think, are still there in the background. They've been quite quiet this time. They haven't been complaining about what Kemi Badenoch's saying. Maybe they've seen the writing on the wall. They can see that really net zero is heading for a big crash fairly soon. Maybe they're just biding their time. We don't know. Yeah. But I think we should welcome what's happened.
I do think, things like immigration, law and order and the economy are going to be massive issues at the next general election. But I think net zero is a big part of it. And certainly when people criticise reform and say, how are you going to fund X or Y policy? The answer should always be getting rid of net zero, because net zero is such a costly policy. And we feel it not just on our energy bills. It's in everything that we buy, isn't it? In terms of the extra transport costs for everything, the extra production costs, the lack of jobs that we have here because of those extra production costs, because what's our manufacturing base, the energy that they use, 4 times the price that they're paying in factories and shop floors in America. You can't compete with that.
No, that's right. And we have the highest electricity prices in the developed world. And, they're going to go up quite quickly if Ed Miliband succeeds in getting this new wave of wind farms brought onto the grid. Now, what is that going to do to what is left of our manufacturing industry? Well, the answer is it's going to kill it stone dead. Yeah. All those people are going to be put out of work, and the welfare bill is going to go through the roof. And what's that going to do to the state of the government finances? It's going to be a catastrophe. But I think what people don't realise, Julia, is that it's really very, very hard to get out of this, because we have been tied into long-term contracts with these wind farms, which essentially means there's no way of reversing this.
And we've got acts of parliament requiring that every decision about everything has to be referred to, net zero policies and our duty to deliver on this 2050 target that's unachievable. And the thing is, I think a lot of people don't understand, and again, it's like whether it's the 2030 target for net zero for electricity, a lot of people think it's energy. No, it's just for energy, electricity, 20% of our energy needs, or of the 2050 target. This doesn't mean, and again, a lot of the people pushing this don't seem to understand this either. This doesn't mean we're not using fossil fuels. We'll still be using probably almost as much gas and oil as we've been using already, maybe even more, given a lot of the industries people want things like, AI, which involve massive amounts of electricity being used. But we're going to import it, because on the net zero thing, this is how crazy it is. If you don't extract it yourself and you don't make anything here yourself using it, you just import it. You don't have to sort of count that in the ledger for or against until it actually hits our shores. so that we can claim that we're net zero, even though what we're buying is being made in a coal-fired factory in China, extracted and travelled around the world on diesel or oil-powered tanker, or flown on a jet. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't count until it's within our geographical shores. So it's a nonsense.
It's an accounting trick.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to basically put ourselves in penury and not be able to pay our bills and have pensioners die of cold in the winter, all of jobs lost. We're going to do all of that for an accounting trick that will mean nothing.
Yeah, that's right. And this is where, you know, we really have to have a serious conversation about whether Ed Miliband should be allowed to continue in office. I mean, if it was, Keir Starmer really ought to be looking at him and going, this guy is nuts. He is going to absolutely tank the country and wreck the economy for decades, and I'm going to let him do it.
But why is everyone blaming just Ed Miliband? He's become a sort of a hate figure. Keir Starmer appointed him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I assume this is internal party politics in the Labour Party, that, you know, he's got to keep the hard left on side, and that's Ed Miliband's side of the party.
And also, I suppose, the Green side of the party. Just finally, I want to ask you, the Green Party have just announced the election of Zach Polanski as their new party leader, overwhelming majority there. And he's very much talked about, you know, wanting to sort of take the party to possibly even doing deals, you know, being open to deals, certainly with Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new sort of, you know, Gaza lefty party. I'm sure you, like me, would like to welcome Zach Polanski as a new Green Party leader, but how worried are you about some of his policies?
I actually quite like the idea that they will get together with the Corbynistas, because that should kill them stone dead, shouldn't it? I mean, because, you know, that's two bunches of absolute nutters working together. I mean, as an electoral prospect, it's not really
British
going
public
to sell
quite
well.
like them. Remember, Jeremy Corbyn got really close to power in 2017.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, I suppose there is that. I think the reality is that we are moving onto a new world where reality is going to play a much bigger part than the sort of, you know.
I love the idea of reality playing a part in politics.
I mean, I mean, you know, you've got the Greens who are living in a fairy story, and you've got Jeremy Corbyn, who's sort of living in this sort of, you know, student politics fantasy world too. Yeah, we can't afford it anymore. We've got to move on and get back to hard-nosed reality.
Andrew Mumford, always good to talk to you, Director of Net Zero Watch. Thank you very much. Tom Slater, Editor of Spiked Online, your reaction to that?
No, it does feel like there's now this just enormous crack in the BS consensus that has existed for so long. I mean, the Tories up until 5 minutes ago were completely paid up members of this, and now both parties of the sort of right of centre in British politics are talking about ripping the whole thing up. That's really significant.
I think Kemi Baden's not quite there yet. I mean, she really needs to just say, come on, this was all nonsense.
I think this is
Claire Coutinho,
we're certainly on that journey.
She definitely, the energy, her shadow energy, she definitely knows it's all nonsense. She's been fighting against it.
They're certainly on that journey. I think this is going to put, and this is the problem, there's been no democratic debate about any of this stuff, in large part because all the parties agreed on it between themselves. They even signed pact saying that they wouldn't question the Climate Change Committee at various elections. They've really sewn this up between themselves. That's over now. The Labour Party in particular, but also the other opposition parties, are going to be put constantly under pressure, on the back foot, made to justify why they're immiserating the country in the name of maybe scraping back one of our 1% of global emissions. It's not going to work anymore.
I've always said it doesn't survive contact with the electorate, with anything like that. But the reality is, or with reality, as Andrew Mumford says. 11:48 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000 is number to call. Up next, going to talk about new sentencing guidelines, and any new sentencing guidelines must basically get the stamp of approval from the elected accountable Justice Secretary. That's after that outrageous sentencing guidelines that earlier this year were supposed to basically mean, if you're black or trans or gay, you'd probably be sentenced to less than if you were white and straight. Well, we'll talk about that up next with former prisoner David Shibley. This is Talk.
think about what she's been criticised for in the past. It's going to Ibiza, it's having a vape on the beach.
I've never criticised her for those things.
I'm not saying that you have, but I'm talking broadly about the kind of criticism that Angela Rayner gets. And I think she has a harder time than other politicians.
No, because she's in the news more because she's a very flamboyant, colourful character. And frankly, this bunch of complete sort of, they look like accountants, but sadly not that competent. She stands out. Everyone knows who she is.
But as Mike and I have always said, you are what you put in your mouth. And I haven't as yet met anybody who doesn't eat a lot that's 25 stone. Or drink a lot. Well, I'm not trying to be rude. I could go further. Eat less. Exercise more.
Yeah, eat less,
Well, it's not
more.
hard, is it? Oh, I'm a lifestyle expert. How do I improve my life? Look at Mikey. Mikey's changed his life, hasn't he? He's only drinking 4 bottles of red a night now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Let's talk about sentencing. We had quite a hoo-ha, I think that's a technical term, a hoo-ha in recent months over new sentencing guidelines that were issued by a body called the Sentencing Council, not accountable to you or to me, yet another of those usual suspects of these bodies, those quangos that just get to have a massive say over our lives, but we have no say on who they are and what they do. But they basically issued these sentencing guidelines, which basically said that there should be sentencing guidelines if someone was in a minority, whether gay or trans or black or other ethnic minority, with a view to those people getting lower sentences than if you were, say, a straight white man or woman. Well, it's decided now by the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who got into something of a row with the Sentencing Council, that she now wants a power of veto over any new sentencing guidelines. Let's talk about this with David Shipley. He's a former prisoner and now a writer and researcher on prison and justice affairs, and joins us once again.
Hi,
morning to you, David.
How are you?
We're very well indeed. Lovely to have you join us. I have to say, I think we were all a little bit surprised, or you probably not as an expert in this field, that the sentencing guidelines could just be set by this body that we didn't have any say over, and the Justice Secretary had nothing to do with it, and they could just say whatever they want. It's a good thing, shouldn't it be, that the Justice Secretary, accountable to MPs and ultimately to people, should have the final say?
Absolutely. I think it's one of these many Blairite quangos. The Sentencing Council was created at the last end of the new Labour government. And I think it's taken 10 or 15 years for us to realise how much power these entities have. Yeah. But the Lord Chancellor at the time and since have been very clear that sentencing policy should be determined by MPs, by the Lords and by ministers. And that's obviously right and proper.
Well, this whole idea it should be independent from government. No, of course, I don't want the Home Secretary or the Justice Secretary saying, I want, David Shipley's committed this crime and I want him to serve this sentence. We don't want that sort of interference. But policy, guidelines, that's what we elect a government to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a very strange power creep that was going on with the Sentencing Council in the spring. They were trying to advocate this idea that actually it was improper for ministers to have a view on sentencing policy, as if it could only be made by experts, which is crazy. Absolutely. We elect governments to govern. And I think there's a really interesting tension actually at the minute between different wings of the Labour government. So at one end, you've got Lord Hermer, who's loves international law and has deployed his government lawyers to inform on ministers.
Yeah, the Attorney General, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the other end, you've got Shabana Mahmood, who I think gets it. She recognises that the rules should be set by Parliament. They should be set democratically. The ministers should be allowed to decide what happens within their briefs.
I have to say, she did stand up to them, although there was quite a bit of toing and froing about whether or not actually her staff had actually been sitting in meetings when they were deciding. It was only controversial once it hit the media, and then the people went, sorry, I'm not entirely sure why, because someone's black or someone's white or trans or gay or straight should get a different sentence. But I think the one thing we can all agree on, people who are paying attention, is that people should serve the sentence they are actually given. Now, we've seen people serving, 2/3 and then half and then 40%, but prisoners will be assured of early release a third of the way through their sentences, as long as they don't misbehave, under new legislation to be unveiled today. why are we even bothering sending anyone to jail at all now?
Yeah, I think if this was done properly, it could be really effective. So if you look at Texas, if you get a 10-year sentence, if you behave badly, you might stay in for 10 or more years. And if you are a brilliant prisoner who really works to change their life, you could be out in a couple of years. I think the incentive there to really behave well is actually very powerful. What we're getting here instead...
The incentive should be you serve 10 years if you behave well, but you'll serve another 5 if you behave badly.
Well, they do have that in Texas as well. I think there's carrot and stick in the Texas model. But what we're getting here is essentially that as long as you don't break the rules and you behave yourself, you'll be out a third of the way through. And I'm just not sure it's enough to shift behaviour, because actually if you behave badly, you'll still be out halfway through. So
but again, what main issues behind bars is that people are locked up for 22, 23 hours a day in overcrowded conditions with nothing to do other than, smoke skunk, and do nothing. I mean, if we want people to behave well, we need to have a clear, simple rate. Everyone is up, everyone is working, everyone has something to do. You get people off drugs, you've got rehab, you've got education, people teaching, training people in new skills. That would improve good behaviour, wouldn't it? That would be a more useful thing, really. But as we know, these things cost money. This isn't about improving good behaviour or motivating people. This is simply about we haven't got enough prison space because no one's built enough prisons in the last 20 years, so we're going to have to just release a load of criminals. I mean, it's not a solution to the problem that the public perceive.
I don't think it is, and I think you're absolutely right. The problem is what goes on in prison. And we haven't got enough space. They're trying to solve that problem. But what you were describing does actually happen at a place called MCC Colchester. So this is the military's version of a prison. Yeah. If you're a squaddy and you go to prison, you go to Colchester, and there you get up every day, you exercise, you train, you study, you get help for substance abuse issues, gambling problems, whatever it might be. And they have a reoffending rate of 9%.
Wow.
Compared to the 40 or so percent that we have here in the main prison
system.
So
it shows it can be done. This is the thing, it can be done. And I don't mind a bit of carrot and a bit of stick, but again, I think most people, especially if someone's been a victim of assault or a theft that's damaged their business or their homes been burgled, that actually the idea that someone, if assuming they get arrested, assuming they get charged, assuming they go to court, assuming they get sentenced to prison, there's a lot of assumptions there, that someone being sentenced to 8 years for an assault on you or a rape or something, and the fact that it might be out in a couple of years is an insult.
I think it is, and I think we should have honesty in sentencing. I think it's much better to say this person will be doing 4 years in prison, and know that that's true. I think when people hear a sentence of 10 years and actually that means 3 or 4 years behind bars, they find that baffling. And that's perfectly right.
Yeah, and I think you're right, honesty in sentencing as well. I think also, as you say earlier, the sentencing guidelines being decided by people who, whether we voted for them or not, are at least accountable to the electorate. David Shipley, always so good to talk to you, always good to get your perspective. Lots more I want to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of the topics we've been covering today. 0344 499 1000. We are going to be talking about the arrest of Graham Linehan, something of a hero, I think, for many of us, and free speech, but he's arrested over some posts he's put on social media. We're also going to be talking up next after the news to Katie Lamb. She's the Shadow Home Office Minister, about where we are on all these absurd immigration stories. Basically, 1 in, 1 out? No, actually it's 3,500 in and none out. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. It's 2 minutes past midday. Whether you're listening on the DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. If you've missed any of the show already today, you can have a little watch on our YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. If you hit subscribe, when you have a look at it, then you'll never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking more about that brilliant one-in, one-out deal that we all loved at the time when we heard about it in July, when Emmanuel Macron and the Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced it, well, it's emerged yesterday that it's going to start within weeks. It was ratified early August. It's now September, and we now know that since it was first talked about, 3,567 illegal migrants have arrived on dinghies from France. Don't forget all the other ones arriving in back of lorries and the like. Not a single one has been returned. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said that she now expects the deportations to begin later this month. So when she said it would happen within weeks, or the Prime Minister said that, did they? I mean, they didn't stipulate quite how many weeks, did they? I mean, it could be 200 weeks for all we know. Meanwhile, she's announced a temporary suspension of the Refugee Family Reunion Scheme, which means that migrants who are granted asylum are now temporarily barred from bringing in family members to the UK. I don't suppose people would have minded if it was their husband or wife and 2 kids, but it hasn't been. It's been their entire extended family. Well, no, that's really got to go, not just temporarily. Plus, French hospitals, extraordinarily, have been ordered to make preparations for an imminent war in Europe. And Germany says it is on alert for Russia's military drills. France's Ministry of Health has told health bodies across the country to prepare for a possible major engagement by March 2026. It's according to documents obtained by a French newspaper. What do they know that we don't know? And the British countryside is outrageously overwhelmingly white and needs more halal food to be more welcoming to people from different backgrounds. Who's saying this? Well, a report on the issue of rural racism by academics who claim that ethnic minority communities face challenges in the countryside and it does not cater for dietary norms that are rooted in religious or cultural practices such as kosher or halal meat, adding to feelings of exclusion. It's a massive issue. I think it's the absolute #1 job that the Prime Minister should be tackling in phase 2 of his government. Because as we learned yesterday, we were in phase 1 until yesterday. That was day 1 of phase 2, and now we're in day 2 of phase 2, which also happens to be the Prime Minister's 63rd birthday. Many happy returns to you, Prime Minister, for your birthday, if not to government, I think we can safely say. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about, in particularly, of course, these one-in, one-out returns deal, which is so far 3,567 in and 0 out. Your reaction to that and all the stories we're talking about, net zero, sentencing guidelines, you name it, get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1, standard network rate message. Tom Slater is still here. I know you're very concerned about the overwhelmingly white countryside, overwhelmingly white studio right now. I mean, that's obviously...
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, I know.
It's not great.
We are very naturally very pale people, aren't we?
There's driven snow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's probably racist in itself. I don't know. I mean, genuinely though, this is these are the academics.
Every year,
but these are the academics who you just know as cheering on Keir Starmer at day 2 of phase 2. What are your hopes for phase 2 of this Labour government, given, as we've been discussing all morning, all of the many successes of phase 1?
What are my hopes for phase 2? That it's not quite as bad as phase 1. I think that's about as much as we can count on. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. There's obviously loads of things that have gone disastrously wrong. The debt still being racked up, all kinds of careening from one scandal to another, one U-turn from another. But what's been fascinating about this government, as much as anything else, is its inability to act, to govern, to get things past its backbenchers, or to, manage to pursue certain policies that they even had pre-rolled and discussed and tried to make the argument for, but they have to, go into a hasty retreat because the public takes fright or their own backbenchers take fright. They're really kind of just stuck there, frozen, incapable of making not even the big decisions that the country definitely needs making, but even quite relatively small ones. And this is a government that couldn't manage to just slow the rate of increase in relation to a few disability benefits. What else are we expecting it to do? So it's been a strange mix, as we've been talking about, of really depressing this first year of Labour government,
Yeah,
but also strangely boring at the same time.
I was going to say, Tom, I mean, you know, thanks. Just cheering us all up.
You wanted a more kind of upbeat take.
I mean, we could try. Let's see if we can get that from our next guest. I have a funny feeling we might not. Katie Lamb is a Conservative MP and Shadow Home Office Minister. A very good afternoon to you, Katie.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. Do you share a lot of Tom Slater's, so we say, pessimism about phase 2 of this Labour government?
I'm afraid I do. I'm sorry to say you're not going to get a much cheerier assessment from me. I think there's no reason to think that phase 2 is going to be any better than the disastrous phase 1.
Now, I have to say, I like to congratulate the Prime Minister, particularly on his birthday and on day 2, phase 2. And I mean this with all due respect to you, Katie Lamb, to be an even worse government than your lot was in the final days. That's quite an achievement, isn't it?
He is definitely doing a particularly terrible job, and I take no joy in that. You know, it's of course I'm not a member of the Labour Party, but I do live here and I'm a British citizen, and I want the country to be a success, and I want the government to be a success, and unfortunately it's failing.
Well, absolutely. Well, let's talk about one of the particular policies they're failing on, and that is on immigration. That's in your area of responsibility as a Shadow Home Office Minister. This much fated one in, one out policy. I mean, again, wasn't at all what the British people were asking for. We wanted it all out and none in, thank you very much. But they offered one in, one out, said it'd be up in a matter of weeks, still not up and running, despite the fact that some people have miraculously been detained. But since this was announced, we've had a whopping 3,500 people arrive on the Channel dinghies. God knows how many more we don't know about through other routes. And not a single person returned, and then luckily at least not a single person arriving from France. But we're told it will happen within weeks. Are you hopeful it'll ever get off the ground, and is it a policy we should be supporting?
I am unfortunately not very hopeful that it may get off the ground, but I think it would be very unlikely. It's very unlikely that it's going to be a success for a number of different reasons. You know, the devil is really in the detail on this, but sending people back to France is where they've just come from. So they're not sending them very far. What is the disincentive from them just to try again? If for every 17 people who come, 16 of them are going to get to stay, if I were running a serious organised immigration crime outfit, I would say, OK, well, no win, no fee. If you don't get to stay in the UK, if they send you back to France, we'll send you on your second journey for free. Yeah. And we don't even know yet for the deal whether we are going to have to take an asylum applicant from France every time somebody comes over. So if you're in France and you try and come here illegally once a week for a year, are we going to have to take 52 people from France for that? Yeah. I mean, this is nonsensical to me.
And indeed, a lot of the people who are coming here illegally are people who know perfectly well if there were a legal route, they wouldn't be judged to be someone who could get on it. So they're still going to be coming anyway. I think we all knew this was madness. I do still always wonder whether Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, the people in the Labour Party pushing this, whether they realise how mad this policy is. I mean, at least the Rwanda policy from the Tories, although it never got off the ground, and although it was on way too small a scale, at least it made sense as a theory. What do you make of the announcements we had from the Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, yesterday about, rather more detail in terms of things like announcing a temporary suspension of the refugee family reunion scheme? So if you're granted asylum here, you can't now just bring your entire family with you. It's going to be a temporary bar on that. We don't know how long, but also the decision to expedite a load of students coming over on scholarships paid for by the taxpayer under a Foreign Office scheme to come here from Gaza to study in this country. What do you make of both of those policy announcements?
Well, the first one I think is just tiny tinkering around the edges of a system that is completely broken. I mean, the transformational change that we need to our both legal and our legal immigration system and our approach to illegal immigration, we are not getting anywhere close to under this government. They just don't seem to understand the order of magnitude of the problem. And to your second point about the student scholarships, you can see this in the things that they're still doing. Their fundamental instincts are wrong. They aren't thinking, well, what is the immigration system for? The immigration system should be to produce the best results possible for the British people and for Britain as a whole. It isn't explicitly and fundamentally a system that exists for the whole world. You know, the point of Britain is not just to be a place where people can come if they are struggling in their home countries. That's very, very sad. Lots of people around the world have really, really difficult lives. But the answer can't be that they all move here.
I wrote this in the column of The Sun last week, and a lot of people said how heartless and cruel I was. I'm like, well, how many billion do you plan to take? I've never had a clear answer from people on this about why they would draw the line at, say, 10,000 or 100,000 or a million or 100 million, because we're talking about billions of people who have worse lives and, if given the option, would rather live here than live where they live.
And it's also, I think, totally the wrong way round to think about it. The question should be, if we want to be and choose to be generous, and we have a long and proud history of doing that, how many people can we take? And you start there, you know, rather than saying the number first, you talk to local authorities. You would say, how many people can you house? How many people do you feel you can integrate into the community, into our culture? What capacity do you have for health appointments? What school place capacity do you have? And
well,
we
at that
know
point, the answer would be zero. I would suggest that if we want to help people living in these basket case countries, we try and help them to help change the basket case country they live in. I'm just not entirely sure that Europe as a whole, let alone the UK, has enough space to take in the rest of the world that is unhappy where they live. Because the thing to remember about this country, and as much as many on the left seem to sort of criticise everything about our culture and our history and what we've done in the past, is that Britain didn't just happen. We didn't just happen to end up as a, you know, OK, with all its problems, a free democracy with relative, you know, economic wealth. It didn't just happen. It was something that the British people and the culture, the philosophy and the religious background help deliver. I don't see why we do need to share it with the rest of the world, frankly.
And fundamental things about our culture are very precious. I mean, not least our attitude to women and the way that women can live in this country and what's considered to be safety and autonomy and freedom for women. That's actually pretty rare around the world. The same is true for gay people. You know, those are fantastic elements of our culture that need not just to be celebrated, but protected. They are fragile.
Indeed. What do you make of the Labour MP Clive Lewis? He represents Norwich South, and he's claimed that some of the people, not all, but some of the people who are flying the St George's flag, the England flag, outside migrant hotels in his constituency are extremists. He says they're trying to mark territory and intimidate people. He says most people say they fly the St George's Cross out of pride, and that's probably even true for some of those putting them on lampposts. He says, but far-right groups are using these flags to mark territory and intimidate the vast majority who reject their extreme views. Do you agree?
I think everybody should be happy and proud to see the flag of their country in the country that they live in. And I think if people have a problem with that, then I think that is their problem. That's not a problem with the flag.
OK. How long do you think it's going to take the Conservatives under your leader, Kemi Badenoch, to get to the same position as, let's face it, where Reform is, where they are 35% in the polls? They're 15 points ahead of Labour even, Tories trailing behind, where they are saying, we're going to deal with the issue of immigration and illegal and legal, but we're going to be dealing with these issues and we are going to get out of the European Convention on Human Rights, get out of the whatever aspects of the Refugee Convention, Human Rights Act and all of that, so that we can actually remove people from this country who arrived here illegally or have stayed here illegally. How long do you think it's going to take your party to finish your reviews, to come round, do all the hand-wringing and actually get to the point where you are able to deliver a policy as has been espoused by the Reform Party through an awful lot of acclaim from a lot of ordinary British voters, that you'll actually start dealing with one of the single biggest issues in the political agenda of this country right now?
So I think on legal migration, there actually is a lot of Conservative policy that we've already published and written up into legislation, which we've tried to propose in Parliament. But of course, the government has a large majority and they've voted it down. I think a lot of what you're talking about is illegal migration. And there is, as of course you know, there's a review that's going on at the moment into membership of the ECHR. And leaving these things is complicated because there are all of the cases that have been judged. I mean, I am on record as saying that I think the only way that we can manage our border is being outside of the ECHR. Yeah. But all of the cases that have been arbitrated in the time that we've been within the ECHR, we have to decide what happens to those, do the precedent stand, etc. So
put some lawyers in a room for 2 weeks. I'm sure they could work it out.
My sense is, I don't know, but I believe that some of those announcements will come around conference and through the autumn.
So we're all going to find out. So Nigel Farage has been stealing, a storm on this over the last few weeks, and Kemi Badenoch is going to be announcing it, or Chris Philp or whoever it is, the Shadow Home Secretary, are going to be announcing this at party conference. Why wait?
I think the position that we're in now, we're just over a year from, I believe I'm right in saying, the greatest electoral rout in British politics. I think the Conservatives in the general election of 2024 lost more seats than any sitting government ever. And to build back from that position, where clearly the public has told us we're very angry with you, to build back that trust takes credibility and detail.
Yeah, again, I kind of wonder, lots of people, it's their full-time job to do that detail. I'm wondering how long it takes, because lots of this stuff is basic principles. You guys were in government for long enough, unable to actually, deliver the Rwanda deal on time, or to actually function at all because of these things. You'd think someone might have worked it out. Let me talk about something completely different. The grooming gangs inquiry. You've done some amazing speeches in Parliament on this, and I know you went very viral at one point and talking about, and you were one of the people who read out the detail of some of these cases from the judge's sentencing remarks, indeed, about the horrific experiences that some of these young girls went through in terms of gang rape and the torture they actually experienced. We haven't heard anything about the grooming gang inquiry lately. Has it been set up? Has anyone been appointed? When's it starting?
Well, as far as I'm aware, there doesn't seem to have been any progress at all. We are actually having, so Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, put in an urgent question to the government about this today. That's now been converted to a statement. So we're hoping to hear from Jess Phillips, because of Parliament, there's no exact time, but I think about 1:30, perhaps, on what the latest is. But I don't really understand the delay.
No, I mean, we're talking months now, aren't we? It's quite bizarre. And just finally, the Green Party have elected a brand new leader, Zach Polanski, this morning. He apparently is quite open to the idea of, working with other parties, particularly Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new party, the Your Party. We've also seen some of the Gaza, MPs for Gaza, which is what they are effectively, saying that they'd be willing to work with Jeremy Corbyn's party. How hopeful are you and the Tories that while your vote is being stolen a lot by Reform and that split on the right, that actually Labour are going to be seeing a big split on the left and could also be damaged?
Well, I think one of the things that people underestimate or sometimes forget thinking about the current cabinet is that lots of them have very small majorities. Somebody like Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, only won his seat by a few hundred votes. And I think actually the same is true of Jess Phillips, whom we were just talking about. So
I think Angela Rayner as well, the Deputy Prime Minister. That's why she might be buying a new home near Brighton.
Well, and that pressure is already there, and I think it is appropriate to ask what effect that is having on policymaking and how the government is running the country.
OK. Would you welcome Zach Polanski to his new job?
Oh, well, I mean, he's been democratically elected, and congratulations to him. But I suspect he and I won't agree on very much.
Katie Lamb, Shadow Home Office Minister, thank you very much indeed for that. Coming back to Tom Slater, which was spiked online listening to that. I mean, Katie Lamb, I think she's actually a rather good operator. She's done some, especially on the grooming gang. She's been very impressive in Parliament, holding the government to account. But whenever you talk to the Conservatives on a lot of the issues we talked about, net zero earlier, and when we talk about immigration, you're just sitting there thinking, she wasn't in government then, but there's litany of failure on the part of the Conservatives. I don't think there's anyone who's going, oh, OK, yeah, well, we definitely will trust them on this, especially as they are coming sort of crawling bit by bit, reluctantly dragged towards, let's face it, probably on some basis suspending or leaving the ECHR, the Refugee Convention, but they don't really want to do it. And I don't think voters are going to think they've got their hearts in it.
There is that. I think it was probably pretty clear since the drubbing of last year and after the leadership election that in terms of policy, I think you could see where things were going. They were going to become more net zero sceptical. They were going to become more ECHR sceptical, if not actually pulling out of it. But I think there's a couple of different things going on, one of which is that no one is really going to listen to anything the Tories have to say for a while yet. I think that's fair to say. They're just not really on the field.
Speeches, they barely even make it onto the front page.
And to be brutally frank, I think that would be true regardless of who was leader. There's been a lot of kind of twitchiness, a lot of talk about maybe Robin Jenrick's the answer. mindset, I think they would be in exactly the same position. I think if they, they could. It doesn't matter which leader they pick, they're going to have the same problem. I also think a lot of this kind of slowly getting towards the position is partly about internal party management as much as it is anything else. If Kemi Badenoch or had gone into that leadership election saying, you know what, we're going to pull out the ECHR next Tuesday, that would have frightened
she wouldn't have been elected.
The Lib Dem aspect of the
but isn't that part of the problem? And that's the thing. So even when people thought they'd elected a sort of a Brexiteer, quite sensible sort of government in 2019 under Boris Johnson, they didn't get that because actually a lot of people, although they had to say they were Brexit or they had to say they support various policies, it didn't really mean it, which is why they weren't querying a lot of things that Boris Johnson was doing, and we didn't actually get the government that people thought they voted for.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, one thing you probably can say about the Conservative Party, and this even goes for the pretty much should be in the Lib Dems kind of characters that you might see from time to time, is that they do have a capacity for opportunism and intellectual flexibility
and reinvention.
That often you don't see.
The most successful political party in the whole of Europe.
It's one of the things that stood them in good stead. So maybe that some of them will notice which way the wind is blowing on a lot of these issues.
But again, I think it's an element now. The problems are so entrenched and so difficult to deal with that actually you need people who not just are competent and able to deal with it. And again, there's a big question mark over Tory competence now. So when you're going, reform, yes, but I might agree with them, but will they be competent enough? People go, well, you don't agree with the Tories, and we know they're not competent because look what they did in office. So many mistakes on that, on policy and delivery as well. But that line from Nigel Farage, which the Tories are a broad church, but a broad church with no religion. That is good. I think that does stick in a lot of people's minds.
Oh no, absolutely. I think that's probably starting to change. I think they're kind of starting to recognise that if they want to reconnect with voters, that they can't go sort of half measures on a lot of these questions, particularly immigration, but I think the environmental issues can become more and more important, especially as people start to feel like the political parties on offer are giving them permission to kind of voice their discontent, and giving them options, I should say. But there's still loads of questions about where the Tory party are going to position themselves in relation to reform. They seem quite keen to attack them on questions of fiscal and general economic credibility. But if you think about the kind of state that they left the government and its finances in, made much worse by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, but nevertheless it was hardly looking rosy. I think that's going to be difficult for them, so who knows
absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to take some calls. I also want to talk about Graham Linehan being arrested as he stepped off a plane yesterday for posting something on social media. That's coming up. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
They're completely out of touch, Julia. They're not listening, they're not understanding, they're not engaging. I mean, it's not just Epping. This is up and down this country. Every town, every city, protests, people out putting flags up saying we've had enough, we don't want this anymore, please listen to us. Our rights are being put on the back burner. Our rights don't matter as much as the rights of migrants that are coming into the country.
Well, you were told that by the Home Office lawyer in the Court of Appeal. Literally said that.
The UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:28 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. You knew all that stuff already. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 and your messages. Let's actually get to the couple of messages first before we talking about the Channel migrants. 3,500 plus have arrived since the government's one in, one out return deal with France. 0 have been deported. And Freddie says politicians have failed the nation. Kevin says just empty, meaningless words to appease the population. I think it's appease the peasants. They think of us as, the peasants, the masses. Alex says no reaction at all. This is exactly what I predicted would happen. Nothing, just business as usual. Didn't expect anything else, says Trevor. This lot have no intention of stopping the boats. Line up the Navy on the border, says Laura, and turn every single boat around now. Yasmin says, is there even any point reacting to entirely predictable circumstances? Kelsa Priest, says Dennis, more lies from Labour, not surprised at all. Let's go to the phone lines now. John is in Bradford. John, you want to talk about net zero, this big speech from Kemi Badenoch today about North Sea oil. Oh, we've just lost John. Oh, darn. Well, hopefully we'll get John back on. In the meantime, while we're waiting for John, I want to talk to Tom Slater, editor of Spike Online, still with us. And I've mentioned it a couple of times. Graham Linehan, we've loved since we've been on air. He, of course, is the writer of Father Ted and the IT crowd. Absolute blank as soon as I say it, of course. And a brilliant guy and a fantastic campaigner on the issue of basically women's rights versus men in dresses claiming to be women's rights. And he has said he's arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow Airport yesterday over a series of what were called anti-trans tweets. Tell us what's going on.
This is a really sinister case. I mean, we talk about people being arrested for tweets all the time, and I think this one really hams it home. So he was flying back to the UK from Arizona. He lands at Heathrow Airport. This is all his account.
He's out writing a new series in America, isn't he?
Absolutely, and he's also back this week for a separate court case, which we won't get into at the moment, but 5 officers is his claim. He was arrested at the airport.
No other crimes taking place yesterday?
No, absolutely. I'm sure it was an easily quiet day on the radio. So they showed up. He was taken to a cell. He was interviewed and he was asked specifically about 3 tweets which were sent back in April. I won't read them all out here, but one referring to what women should do if a man enters a women's space, joking that maybe they should give them a punch in a certain area, which might deter them from entering a women's space again. There was another photo of a kind of trans activist protest that Graham joked that a photo you can smell. And another one, probably the most striking one here as to why this is the police's business at all. I hate them, misogynists and homophobes, F them. So these 3 tweets, according to Graham, were put before him. We've now got a statement from the Metropolitan Police reported by Charlie Peters and others saying that this interview was on suspicion of inciting violence.
Because
presumably because there was that joke about punching the plums.
But the joke is you're talking about supposedly trans-identified men calling themselves trans women, but you punching them between the legs would hurt particularly because they have spherical objects there that she mentions. I don't know what word I'm allowed to say.
I'm sure the
testicular arrangements which would hurt. Let's go with that.
Quite. And the couple more details which are really troubling. So not only he's been bailed, not charged, which is one of the reasons it's a bit easier to talk about this case, but also that one of his bail conditions, in fact his only bail conditions, is that he can't tweet, so he can't talk. So he's been interviewed by police on suspicion of a tweet crime, and as a consequence of this, he's told he's not allowed to tweet. We wait to see what's going on with this. The Free Speech Union are involved and paying for his legal representation, as you would
This is why I'm a member of the Free Speech Union.
But this is the thing. Even if nothing comes of this in the end, the process is the punishment.
Always.
One detail here in his account is that he ended up having to seek medical attention. He got taken to A&E because he had incredibly high blood pressure, a combination of not just this encounter with the authorities, but also many years of being harassed, not just by trans activists.
Well, the stress level. Look, he's lost his career, his family, his friends. I mean,
do we really have we really become a country? And I think the answer is yes, in which comedians or anyone, frankly, can be arrested by 5 police officers over what they tweet and are so distressed by the experience they have to go to hospital.
Yeah.
This is where we've ended up.
But also, we've seen many cases where the likes of Kelly J. Keane and others who are activists, not anti-trans, they are simply pro-women because women are only not a subset, and they're standing, and we've seen, politicians claiming to be the nice people standing in front of the protesters, who are objecting to people talking about women's rights and women's safe spaces, who make the most outrageous threats. They hold up placards saying, kill TERFs, punch TERFs, rape TERFs. I mean, interesting, because of course I don't know how trans women could do that if they're women. You can't commit rape under English law if you're a woman. The rape threats, the death threats to people like J.K. Rowling and to many other women online who talk about this, no action taken whatsoever, nothing. And we've just had that case of the Labour councillor Ricky Jones standing up in front of a crowd, rising tensions, and talking about these migrant hotels outside a migrant hotel in the place where he represents, and talking about how we need to slit the throats. He's on tape. It's not questionable. Oh, did he say it? Didn't he? He's on tape, mouths, actually saying the words and then putting his finger across his throat, slit the throats of the fascists, the protesters. I mean, and okay, he went to trial, and quite rightly, and a jury let him off because juries largely don't think people who say things should go to prison. I think the jury. I know you'll probably agree with the jury. I think the jury were probably a bit questionable on that. Don't want him to go to prison for it. No, but we know that Lucy Connolly, for much less, did spend more than a year behind bars. There's nothing in here that is a crime. Even saying I hate people. You're allowed to hate people.
Also,
hate and love are opposite things. You're allowed to hate people.
Absolutely, and who he's hating on is misogynists and homophobes. So if the police have an issue with that, maybe they should look themselves in the mirror. I
hate misogynists and homophobes. Feel free to arrest me for that, but I'm happy to submit to a jury.
Do you remember that case of I think his name is Sarah Jane Baker, that geezer who transitioned himself in prison, who gave a speech in front of one of these kind of trans rights rallies and saying, if you see a TERF, punch them in the effing face. Again, was investigated. Nothing happened there.
Yeah.
And yet here, 5 police officers armed at Heathrow Airport.
I'm just done with this. I'm done. And then, the Elon Musks and others say there's something wrong, and J.D. Vance's with freedom of speech in this country. They're not wrong. They're not. Graham Linehan, we are on your side. I know you're a big listener to this show. We are on your side, and I'm very glad the Free Speech Union's got involved. And seriously, though, thank God for the Free Speech Union in this country, because I don't know who else would be standing up for people like this. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Get in touch, 0344 499 1000. Let's get back. I think John is in Bradford. We did manage to get him back on the line. John, sorry to keep you waiting, my darling, but we lost your line. You wanted to talk about net zero and Kemi Badenoch's speech today.
Well, it's a very simple solution. If you allow more fracking, if you allow more drilling, you're going to get more money in from taxing the companies, and then you can use that money to build small modular reactors, also tidal waves, and also thermal energy, and you can use that money to get to net zero quicker. And what I can't understand is why these people can't see this.
No, we definitely need to build more nuclear power stations. 100%. That would be clean. You know why? Because it's a religion. It's not rational.
Yeah, I mean, they're just bankrupt in this country, and what I can't understand is why nobody's actually taken Miliband to court for waste of public funds or misuse.
Shouldn't we just? I hate to tell you, because net zero is enshrined in law by the daft bunch who were in before the Labour lot, and unless someone gets in and changes the law on that, you can get away with this madness. John, great to have got you on the line. Thank you so much. 12:36 is the time. Going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about why France and Germany seem to be absolutely convinced that we're going to be at war with the Russians in just a year or two's time. Should we be preparing too? What do they know that we don't? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. Let's talk about what the heck the French and the Germans know that we don't know, and why they seem to think that we're going to be possibly at war with Russia within a matter of a year or two. French hospitals, according to documents obtained by a French newspaper, have been ordered to make preparations for imminent war in Europe. Germany says it's on alert for a Russian military drill that could be used as an excuse to basically launch an invasion of European neighbours. Well, let's talk about this with Mason Gifford. He's a former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine and indeed elsewhere as well, and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Mesa.
Good afternoon.
It's all very worrying when you hear about these stories, or should we not read too much into it? And then actually, you know, we have to have preparations for war at all times, and that would include hospitals being able to prepare for a war or other emergencies, and that, of course, military drills would be a signal, you know, that perhaps we should be be on alert, or is there something to worry about here?
There is genuinely something to worry about. At the end of the day, Vladimir Putin is a dictator. He's someone that doesn't consider there to be a limit to Russia's borders. He said in the past that wherever a Russian soldier places his boot belongs to Russia. He's even described the fall of the USSR as one of the greatest tragedies that's ever sort of befallen the world. So this is a man who has already invaded Ukraine. He aspires to take other countries in Europe, or other parts of Europe. For example, Transnistria in Moldova, the Baltic countries. For us personally, it would be devastating if there was an invasion of the Svalbard Islands. So at the end of the day, we must be prepared. We've underinvested in the military for a very long time. And the new Russian tactic of seizing ground and then hiding behind their bloated military forces and their nuclear weapons is something that could genuinely erode Europe's borders.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder about our ability to actually see the genuine threats that face us, given that an awful lot of the so-called experts, even up to, you know, mid-February in 2022, were saying, of course Russia isn't going to invade Ukraine. Putin said he wouldn't, apart from the fact he basically had said he would, and he'd amassed 120,000 troops on the border and a whole bunch of tanks. I remember thinking it was pretty much a sure thing that he was going to invade. Oh, and what a surprise he did. I mean, first of all, you can't take anything he says for granted. He has talked today about how, of course, he's not going to invade other countries, but he's done it repeatedly. And he's done it very cleverly, as we saw with Crimea in 2014, the little green men. No Russian insignia on their uniforms, but they were basically, Russian military going in. And that's the big fear in countries like the Baltic states, that's what's going to happen. They're surrounded by Russian territory. And the fear in Poland. Do you think actually the countries that have not only have real borders, actual land borders with Russia, but also have experienced life under Russian rule, under Soviet rule, they perhaps get it rather better than our lot do here?
Absolutely, because the threat for them is right on their doorstep. You've seen Poland invest a vast amount of money in their military over the last couple of years. They've grown their tank force to well over 1,000 modern battle tanks. Meanwhile, Britain, we're going to buy about 150 or so when we upgrade to the Challenger 3.
Yeah, that'll solve it then. I mean, even Poland, I believe, Poland's even they reinforced their border, haven't they? It's now got a few miles now of the barbed wire and the blocks and basically reinforcing their ability to actually prevent a land invasion. They are taking it seriously.
An iron curtain has descended over Europe again. Basically, from all through Poland, all through the Baltic countries, they're investing billions of pounds in defending their borders. As I said before, Russia has a long-standing tactic of deception, of saying one thing and doing another. And it is ingrained within their military ideology. And they did it in Ukraine, and they're very likely to do it in other parts of Europe as well. And the old tactic of the Baltic countries retreating, ceding ground for time so that Europeans can step in and sort of save the day is now no longer an option, because Europe is not in the condition it once was.
And that's interesting, because I've heard lots of people say, look, Putin's not going to risk war with Europe, i.e. with NATO countries under those treaty obligations under NATO, but also they're already bogged down in Ukraine. They can't possibly have the forces. They're already stretched beyond anything to actually then take on other countries. What would you say to those claims?
Well, Russia is increasingly aligning itself with China. There is a new axis of evil on this planet.
And we're seeing that in this summit right now, playing out right now.
Absolutely. The world has become a hell of a lot more unstable than it once was. We have entered a new phase of the sort of post-World War world of ideals, of democracy, free speech, and all the rest of it. We are back to the 1920s and before. This is the age of empires again, essentially. Yeah. And this is something that even Donald Trump has pushed, which is a shame, because that is part of the consideration. Will Trump come to the defense of Europe?
But there's no actual duty to militarily defend our allies. I would absolutely question the likelihood that many European countries, let alone America, would actually go to military defence of any of our allies, particularly the Baltics. I think there'd be I think we are, we're in 1930s territory of sort of, maybe he'll be placated by having this country or that. But the reality is there is that real threat. So in terms of how we should be preparing, look, you're someone, you fought against ISIS, you fought against Russian forces in Ukraine. In terms of the reality of war, look, we know we're supposedly beefing up our percentage of our GDP spending on war, but let's face it, a lot of that is like veterans' pensions. Well, it's worthwhile, but it ain't going to help our war effort. Apparently, a bunch of it is going to be money that's going to be spent on paying the Mauritius to rent back the Chagos Islands that we already own. And we're talking about a tiny increase over a number of years to come in the future when the threat is the here and now. What would you do if you were in charge of making those decisions? What would you be spending and what would you be buying and who would you be recruiting and in what numbers?
Well, if the first thing I've been devastated by is the split between Europe and America, I do think that closer unity between sort of Western civilization, amongst Western civilization, is so vital when we come to countering the rise of countries like China. Yet at the same time, we should be spending more on defense. We should be spending more money on the ability to grow mass. I'm not necessarily saying that we should have a bloated army today, but the ability to have a solid reserve of equipment that then when there is a surge of sort of patriotic fervour, if there were to be a major large-scale war, it doesn't have to be patriotic fervour, it could be actually just the fact that we'd be recruiting more. Just the ability to train them, the ability to house them, the ability to actually equip them and then deploy them. We've got to consider the military today, which is 74,000 or whatever it is at the moment, is simply the first wave of a major conflict. The ability to raise another 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 is something that we should be considering and investing in.
And when you look at countries like Finland, they've got like 250,000 people in their reserves.
Absolutely, and they've got plans to grow it to 1 million. By the way, their population is something like 5 million people in the entire country, yet they have plans to grow their reserve to 1 million people in the event of war. So it's just the ability in the UK to have the equipment and the resources and the infrastructure available that if there was a large-scale war, that we would actually be able to defend ourselves and actually be a partner.
Which right now we can't, and when we do need to, it's going to cost us a heck of a lot more.
Absolutely. And as you said before, the Chagos Islands, we absolutely should not be falling into that trap.
Absolutely, 100% on that. Mesa, we'll have to leave it there. Mesa Gifford, former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine. He's been on the actual ground, on literally in the trenches. Tom Slater, I mean, he speaks an awful lot of sense in this. How worried are you about this? And especially you've got this meeting going on in the West, in the East right now. We've got Xi Jinping hosting the likes of the North Korean leader, Russian leader Vladimir Putin, the Indian leader Modi, who's increasingly supposed to be one of us, democratic leader, increasingly moving to the East.
Well, it's one of those things where we knew that we were heading towards this more multipolar world. That was kind of an inevitability. There's also the kind of question about what it is that China in particular want. They, in some respects, are quite a kind of cautious sort of status quo power. You could get the sense that they were as, if not morally outraged and certainly irritated by what Russia did in Ukraine because of the fact that it kind of scrambles the dial and whatever. But I think the takeaway is, regardless of what happens next, the West in particular, but probably the world in general, has realised that this kind of like supposed holiday from history that we've been on is over.
Yeah.
And we need to start looking at geopolitics afresh. We cannot just assume that everything's going to be fine because war is something that happened in the
past.
In the past.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are big questions to be had. I'm sure everyone wants to do that in such a way that averts any kind of major conflict and what have you. But at the same time, those questions need to be addressed.
You can avert a conflict by preparing for a conflict. Speak softly, but carry a big stick. We ain't got the stick. That's right. We've got idiots like David Lammy.
Got a twiglet.
Yeah, we've got a twiglet, exactly. Coming up, on that happy note, happy Tuesday, day 2 of phase 2. Again, when we talk about the immigration, we talk about the economy and all the things, this is a government that is utterly, utterly incapable of taking on and dealing with some of these issues. Up next, I wonder if they'll be able to take on the #1 issue in this country. The countryside is too white, it's probably racist, it's not inclusive, and what it needs is more halal meat. That is a genuine academic report. We're going to be talking about that up next. You don't want to miss it. This is Talk.
Completely out of touch, Julia. They're not listening, they're not understanding, they're not engaging. I mean, it's not just Epping, this is up and down this country. Every town, every city, protests, people out putting flags up saying we've had enough, we don't want this anymore, please listen to us. Our rights are being put on the back burner. Our rights don't matter as much as the rights of migrants that are coming into the country.
Well, you were told that by the Home Office lawyer in the Court of Appeal. Literally said that.
UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to Joe. 12:53 is the time. You know what the problem is with this country? It's not the economy. It's not, problems with our heritage. It's not problems with immigration. It's not problems with the NHS. What the problem is really is that we don't have enough halal meat in the countryside, which means it's not inclusive for people coming from minority, religious and ethnic groups. Apparently, that is genuinely what the University of Leicester's Centre for Hate Studies thought. They produced a report this week on the issue of rural racism. Apparently, the British countryside, outrageously in an overwhelmingly white country, is overwhelmingly white and needs more halal food. Couldn't make this stuff up, except of course they did make it up because these organisations, these academics are utterly bonkers. Let's talk about this with the Countryside Alliance's David Bean, who joins us. A very good afternoon to you in your no doubt overwhelmingly white, non-inclusive part of the world.
Well, I'm in London, so it's perhaps a little bit more inclusive than it might otherwise be. But thank you, Julia. Good afternoon.
I mean, it is utterly bonkers. We've had so many reports in recent years saying nonsense things like, you know, black people can't go to the countryside and it's too white. We're not encouraging people. As if, like, what do you need to do encourage people to go on a walk in the countryside? But this report suggests that people aren't from certain ethnic and religious backgrounds don't feel welcome in the countryside because it's full of white people and they can't get halal and indeed kosher food. Is that the case?
Well, you're right, Julia, of course, that this story crops up every roughly 18 months or so, every time an activist group, or as in this case, a group of academics, publish something to this effect. And it's always very much the same sorts of points that are being made. And I mean, you know, really our response hasn't changed through the years, which is that while we recognize that racism is a problem in the United Kingdom, and certainly racism should always be confronted whenever it crops up, the idea that there's something special about rural areas, that they deserve to be singled out and highlighted as being particularly racist, just is not supported by any of the available evidence.
No, but the argument is that they're racist simply by being majority white, but the majority of this country is white. And in fact, you know, living in a city like London, where, you know, huge swathes of the population are not white-skinned, and huge numbers of the population are actually not just, you know, 2 or 3 generations in migrant, but are actually recent migrant people who were born abroad. You know, you perhaps might forget that the country is, what, 85, 88% white, something like that. You would expect the countryside to be more likely to be white, but I don't know why, you know, for instance, I don't know, Morris dancers and antique shops should be considered in some way to be a difficulty for people of a particular background.
No, indeed. And of course, there are good reasons why the countryside tends to have a higher proportion of white people than urban centres. Typically, if you immigrate into the United Kingdom, then you're going to be looking for a couple of things in particular. First of all, you're going to be looking for a place where you can most easily find work that you're suited to. Well, that's going to be in a city. Yeah. Also, you might very well be looking for people who come from the same sort of background as you do. Again, you're
likely to be in a city. But also, I'm not sure why anybody who, for instance, was an immigrant to this country as opposed to born here, either group would be surprised to discover that there are areas of the country where the majority population are white, and why that would be an issue. I wouldn't go, for instance, to India and feel like, this isn't welcoming, because these people don't look like me because they're not white, or think that when I used to live in the Caribbean, or when I've lived in other parts of the world. I mean, I think it's a really strange thing for people to be concerned about. But of course, I mean, this report goes, how can we make the countryside more inclusive? I mean, what they mean by that is, how can we make the countryside more like our cities? But don't people go to the countryside for it not to be like our cities?
Well, I mean, certainly that's a distinct possibility. Now, I certainly don't think that it is a bad idea to be encouraging people in the countryside to be welcoming. Obviously, there's an economic imperative there in terms of getting people to visit rural businesses and such. But for me, the focus shouldn't be on race. It should be more on educating the population at large about the countryside. We need more education. Yeah. For children about the realities of rural life.
Yeah, and where your food comes from. Yeah, exactly. Rather than this, again, this is a bunch of academics living in a city spouting abject nonsense as per usual. David Bean, great to have you join us all very briefly from the Countryside Alliance. Tom Slater, I mean, you know, you'd fit in the countryside, you're very white.
Apart from the fact I don't know what I'm doing in the countryside.
No, exactly.
You know, I'd be as clueless.
I bet you don't even own a pair of wellies.
Of course not.
No,
what do you do with something like
but these reports, they come out as David
it's every year,
said.
yeah.
It is. I mean, but these people are mad. I keep saying this on the, but look, they're just. What are they talking about?
I think they set eyes on something. It could be the countryside, it could be you know, children's cereal box character, and they just work out how it's racist.
There are too many orange characters on them, and it's not inclusive for green characters.
It makes a lot more sense when you realise they've just started with the conclusion and worked backwards. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But also that they are just not very clever. I think that's the main thing. There are an awful lot of people called academics now, just not very clever. Anyway, Tom said it's been an absolute pleasure having your company, talking always loads of sense today. Ian Collins, we're hoping, is going to be talking sense. He's up next. Good afternoon to you.
That's why the Dulux head office always win loads of awards for diversity, isn't it? They do rather well. I mean, the countries are ridiculous. Look at a badger, for example. They're black and white, so they're ticking all the boxes.
Very fair point.
No one ever saw a mischievous
stoat. You're not allowed to kill them.
Or an angry beaver. You know, they're all